welcome to this week's edition of the Ride Along Radio Show, the show where we comment on events of the day, current events, and political, social events all across the country. And we give you our perspective as law enforcement officers who work the streets of Los Angeles and who tell it like it is and have a wide and varied political beliefs and deeply held convictions and opinions, of course, that you know what they say about opinions. So I'm George Holt.
I'm Gil Contreras.
And this is Ride Along Radio, and we have a couple of guests, one of whom is with us now, and this is to my left, coming to the stage. It's Geoff Brown, who is a comedian and social commentator, and actually one of my favorite people to do both, and so I'm really glad to have him here.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, man.
We'll see when the show's young.
No. You know, as long as we don't end up in a fist fight, it's all good.
I tell you, you got a gun. I ain't going to fist fight with nobody with a gun. That's stupid.
So,
if we could get intern Darren, if we could get you to, I got my other guest is in the alley back there. If you could just let him in, that's Frank Stolze.
All right, cool.
Frank Stolze, what color is Frank Stolze?
Frank, what color is he?
Yeah.
He's white.
He's white? Okay, for the record, the brother was here on time.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, well, you can needle him about that because he's going to be sitting right between us. So.
Yeah.
So there we go. So a whole lot to cover, as you know, our topic today is the killing of Alton Sterling, and since we published that topic and decided on that topic, there was another police shooting, controversial police shooting of Philando Castile.
Which was live streamed on Facebook. It's the most incredible video I've ever seen.
Amazing. And we'll talk about that. We're gonna break these down and do them one at a time, and we'll stop in the middle and do some comparison between the two, because I know that people are drawing a lot of comparisons, mostly because they happen so close together. But we're going to get into the killing of Alton Sterling first, and you know. Let me back up and do our recap from last week, because we always do that, and then we'll jump right into the meat of the topic. All right. So we're gonna bring our guests, both of our guests. We're gonna bring them back simultaneously, so we can have Frank come have a seat next to me here.
Come on in, Frankie Stolze.
Good evening. Good morning.
Good evening. Good morning. Have a seat right here.
I don't even know what time of day it is.
We'll hook you up with these green beets.
I like to say that Frank Stolze is covering the city like a cheap suit.
There it is, folks.
All right, there we go.
They're not wearing a cheap suit, but covering the city like one.
So we've already introduced ourselves and Geoff Brown. So Frank, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I have you down as a veteran crime reporter, and if you can give our viewers a little bit of your background in that.
Well, that's probably generous. But
Which part?
Well, you are a veteran reporter.
I've been reporting in Los Angeles since 1991. I arrived.
Oh, wow, you got
LA,
here right in time.
I arrived in L.A. Jan 1, 91. 3 months later, King was beaten.
Right.
A year or so later, the city rioted.
Right.
And it's been a ride ever since.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. That's why I said I know you came in right in time. If you came in 91. You came right about the time that happened, and so you were here for all the fireworks that happened and all the changes that happened afterwards. So, where'd you start your journalism career?
So I was at then KLON Jazz Radio, now KJazz.
I remember KLON out of Long Beach.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I used to love that station.
88.1, Long Beach, yeah.
I used to love that station.
Straight ahead jazz.
Fantastic. We had a good news department. We also had a statewide news show that we did at the time.
Okay.
And it was a good operation. I moved right on the dial, but probably left in the political perspective when I went over to KPFK Pacifica Radio.
Sure.
And then really for the last, 13, 14 years, I've been at KPCC Radio doing a lot of political reporting and criminal justice reporting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dynamite. All right.
And Frankie Stolze was my news director when I was a broadcast journalist and radio talk show host over at the left side of the dial. On FM.
All right.
That's how I met Frank, and I won a golden mic under. That's where I learned the news business was from Frank Stolze.
Outstanding.
Don't blame me.
I was going to say. Now you may have taught him everything he knows, but you clearly didn't teach him everything you know, because he's still a work in progress. So let me ask you this: so at that point, you said it was the left of the dial, but where were you politically at that time?
I was probably further to the left.
Okay.
I've always been kind of a centrist, but I think I was kind of center-left, during that time. I think after I left law enforcement, I kind of went into this kind of activist mode, I just thought that being, on the front lines of gangs and drugs out there, I just felt like it was just futile. What we were doing was just futile. It wasn't making a difference anywhere.
Right.
There was so much dope.
That's a common refrain, yeah.
And I just got fed up with it, and I thought some of the tactics we were using, were a bit much. And
and at that time, the law enforcement wasn't doing a lot of self-reflection.
No, and it was
doing a lot of defending. We're right. Get off our backs.
Right. And it was aggressive policing. In the 80s and 90s, it was aggressive police work in South Central, the Valley, East LA, and those are where I worked. And so that was my background. That's why I came out of that background. And so coming into journalism and covering those kind of stories, and was kind of a natural fit for me. And the thing I loved about being public radio was, because I also did a short stint over at 980 KFWB, where, you gave us 22 minutes and I gave you the world.
That's right.
However, I only had 30 seconds. I only had 30 seconds to tell a story. And at public radio, at least, I had 4 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes, and I could really present all of the sides of an issue. And Frank Stolze, as news director, was, he was more important that we got the story and we got both sides. It wasn't, quote, activist journalism, close quote, like that left side of the dial is now.
Gotcha. All right, cool. And you know what? And that's I knew some of that. I didn't know all of that. So that's enlightening to me, and I hope that was enlightening to a lot of our people who are watching either now or later. When we say certain things and give out certain information and have a certain perspective, that it's typically pretty well thought out, and it comes from our direct experience. It's not like we're reacting emotionally without the benefit of intellect. In other words, we don't just be pulling stuff out of our ass to dumb it down a little bit.
Right.
So
I guess you can say that because it's not broadcast, right?
Exactly. We can say what we want.
Say whatever you want.
So now I know that our esteemed guest, Geoff Brown here, is not only a comedian extraordinaire, but a social commentator as well. And I know that you've done some broadcast stuff too.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, a cat that's kind of in the crosshairs right now, D.L. Hughley. I write for his radio show.
Oh, really?
And I just saw him.
I knew him back in the day. I always really liked him.
Yeah, it's my man. I do this. I do stand up because, well, I have to. It's just something I have to get out.
Sure.
And community activism, I kind of fell backwards into. Shout out to Miss Morris, working with her at another radio station that we used to work at. With a good friend of mine, Zoe Williams, we do a radio show that is conscious and uplifting, and we go into a lot of deep subjects. And
this is the Zoe what guy?
Zoe Williams, yeah, Zoe what guy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my man. And I don't come here from any of those angles. I basically come here as a common man and a black father. And it's just that I have been blessed or cursed with a very sensitive bovine feces meter. And
you can say it. Remember, it's not broadcast. Radio. You can come
it just sounds better. It sounds better.
More elegant.
At some point this evening, and I'm unafraid to say anything. So at some point, if my bovine feces meter goes off, I will test the level of bovine feces in the room.
Sure, as you should.
Very simple questions.
And everyone here should do that. And that's not and there's like no ground rules we didn't talk about before. Hey, this is off topic or this is off limits. These are some very sensitive topics, and I know that everybody is tuning in to get the real. We're not tuning in, or you're not tuning in to get any departmental talking points. And Gil and I always talk about that. We don't have an agenda that's driven by a need to keep our jobs or a desire to be acceptable within a law enforcement organization. We're just telling you how we really feel, and we'd like to think that that's an informed perspective and it's respected as such. And let me clear something else up too, because we always get this social media pushback, and this time we got it early. And someone said, "I can't wait to see how you guys are going to defend these murders." Basically, because we're talking about Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. And as I responded to that person, I don't care why you tune in. I'm just glad that you do.
Right.
So thanks for the support.
Yeah.
But
love us or hate us, it don't matter.
Right. Just watch. It's cool. But as we've said repeatedly, we are not afraid to criticize the actions of the police. We've done so repeatedly. We will do so at some point again tonight, because we're talking about two entirely different topics.
Right.
Entirely different cases. We're going to compare and contrast those two.
And it's also, for me, it's important because not only do I have the police background, but I spent a number of years working with a former partner of mine doing criminal defense investigations.
Right.
So I've worked both sides of the thing. So, I've worked, I've looked at cases, and I've actually had cases undone that against a client because the officers either didn't follow procedure or didn't follow the law. And when you find it, you go, oh wow, that's pretty glaring. But that was really the exception, and it wasn't the rule. What I found in criminal defense was that probably 97% of the officers out there are arresting the right people for the right crimes in the right way. That's what I found.
Okay.
Those don't make the news though.
Right.
Well, the again, I guess I can go ahead and call it my. It's not pegged in the red, but a couple of topics have definitely spiked my bullshit meter.
Okay, go
already.
for it.
One, the concept that these two shootings are entirely different is like walking into a pasture of shit and saying that these two turds are different. They're both shit. So the getting down to the brass tacks and delineating whether or not the officers were within their rights, whether I think again is semantics, because you're and I'm going to try to make this brief, but people need to look at the police for exactly what they are. They are attack dogs that can drive.
I think my bovine meter just turned on.
Okay, absolutely.
That reminds me of a funny story.
Of course, as it should.
Topic.
As it should. Because it really, when you really look at it, it's almost like the police try to put themselves on the sides of the people who put you in place in the first place. When people hear the term serve and protect, you don't serve and protect people. You serve and protect commerce. Okay.
Okay, but you say that, but
yes.
But having run into a burning building full of strangers,
my meter's moving,
and haven't had to be hospitalized for smoke inhalation as a result of that, I can tell you I didn't run into that burning building to save the goddamn building. I ran into that burning building to save those people.
And God bless you for being a nice person.
That was what that was about. It had nothing to do with commerce.
That falls under your humility. That falls under your humanity. That doesn't fall under your badge. That falls under your
know
humanity.
what? Well, let me say this. There was three of us. There was four of us, me and three other people that ran in there.
And
all of us were cops.
Of you are great.
All of us were cops. What I'm saying is the people on the bus stop across the street, they're human beings too. They didn't run their ass across the street and run into that burning building. So it's not just humanity, because there was humans who didn't run in. It was about the duty, because every cop there ran in and nobody else did.
Okay. Let me give you that one, and let me multiply that times 5,000. That there are hundreds of wonderful instances
that don't make the news.
That don't make the news.
Because that didn't make the news.
Because to be honest with you, it's not newsworthy. Because the news isn't about spreading the latest thing that happened. The news is about controlling a mass group of people. So that's why nothing like that would make the news.
Well,
I think you ought to be commended.
Hold on 1 second, Frank. You're from the news. Is that your job? Is that your job, Frank? Is that why?
Is going to happen?
Is that why you're doing what you do, to control the people?
Well, look. I mean, at KPCC, we pick stories that we think are affecting a lot of people, that are important stories. We often focus on injustice. We focus on trends.
But are you trying to control public thought about stuff?
We are not.
But it happens.
But over time, there certainly have been concerns expressed about mainstream media operating on a relatively narrow narrative. Not exploring different strains of thought or different political points of view. Let me add one last thing, though.
Okay.
we just went from the industrial age to the information age.
Yes,
There's an
wow.
information revolution going on right now.
Right.
So, while there's still
anytime
a
that
ton of
somebody's
people
death
watching
is
mainstream
live
news.
streamed,
Sure, right.
on
That's
Facebook,
pretty
we're
incredible.
definitely
Shows a
age of
great
information.
example.
That's pretty incredible.
So there are more opportunities to hear different points of view than ever.
Than ever.
Absolutely. But you know what? We had a guest in here. Actually, he was Skyping while I was Skyping when I was in Texas. David Cruz, broadcast journalist veteran.
That's right.
David Cruz. And David Cruz spoke on this. And David Cruz talked about the editorial decisions that go on how to cover what stories to cover, what stories not to cover, that come down from the very top. The ownership of those 6 corporations that control all the media, or not all, that control the majority of the media in this country. So when anybody wanted to dispute that, the man just sat up and said it.
Well, I'll dispute it to this extent. There are more outlets than ever.
Right.
Right, that's true.
And B,
we're one of them.
And B,
we're not beholden to anybody.
B, I promise this will be the only plug. Certainly in public media, we are the majority of our funding, or the biggest chunk of our funding, comes from individual listeners, which gives us a lot of editorial independence.
That's true.
In the way that you guys have a lot of editorial independence here.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's my only plug for public radio.
I don't know if this puts a
Maybe.
button on the topic, but this is for you. It's in order to check the bullshit in the room, you ask very simple questions. It appeared to me that your response to what I said was like I didn't make any fucking sense. So I ask you, is there any credence to this statement? Mass media controls mass minds, yes or no?
No. They don't control my mind.
I said that's a great answer to another question. The question again.
Nor does it control
mass
any
media
mind,
control mass minds? No.
Any other minds
All
that
right,
I know.
I know where the bullshit level in the room is. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Now speaking of feces and different varieties of feces.
Yes, sir.
I will agree with you that we're talking about 2 piles of shit here in these situations.
Absolutely.
Because they're both bad incidents that happen.
Yes.
However, there's a difference between bullshit and dog shit. Okay? Bullshit you can fertilize stuff with.
Yes.
So it's shit, but it's got a use. Dog shit is just dog shit. So one of these is dog shit and one of them is bullshit.
And neither is a meal.
Neither's a meal, but they're different. They're
You're losing me here.
They're different.
Dog poop isn't fertilizer?
No, it's not.
No, it just fucks up sneakers.
You didn't try to fertilize anything with that, did you?
No, you ain't doing nothing but fuck up your sneakers with dog shit.
Yeah, I guess I
All
did.
right. So there's different levels of value. People go to Home Depot and buy bags full of bullshit. I never see anybody buy a bag full of dog shit. So there's some value. All shit's not created equal.
I'm just a
is what
city
I'm saying.
guy. I don't know that.
It's created by the same process, but not considered equal. So listen, let me get back on our track here, okay? And our last show was how secure are our airports. We had a guest in, Marshall McLean from the L.A. Airport Police Officers Union, who's also a police officer at LAX, where I used to work. And he had some good stuff to say about that, as well as we had a surprise call-in guest, retired Chief Bernard Wilson, who is an aviation security expert extraordinaire. He's, during his time at LAX, he was very active in implementing a lot of changes. He was chief when 9/11 hit. A lot of people say, well, what did LAX have to do with 9/11? Here's what LAX had to do with 9/11. One of those flights that hit the World Trade Center was en route to LAX. Okay.
Flight 93.
93 was inbound to LAX.
I took 93 90 days before that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's it kind of hits home for you a little bit then, right? So it was coming to LAX, and that was an LA-based flight crew on that aircraft, or at least some of them were based out of LA.
Right.
So, and if you go to LAX now, there's actually a memorial there, 9/11 memorial for the people whose lives were lost.
I'll tell you this: when I took a training from the FBI, because I'm a member of InfraGard, they actually had talked to the crew of 93. I believe it was 93, and Muhammad Atta, had actually taken a test flight over. And he had the uniform, he had the ID, he had everything, and so they let him on the plane. And what this guy, this captain, retired captain from the airline, said to us was that when he showed up, just his look wasn't right. It didn't feel right. He looked right, but it didn't
feel right.
And they were uncomfortable. They let him on the plane, and he rode all the way to L.A. and on the plane. And,
wow.
And then later he said, when the World Trade Center occurred and they found part of the passport, when they said the name, he said he started
chills.
crying and got chills because that guy had done a test flight on their plane in the jump seat.
God damn. Yeah, that's awful, man. But so basically the airports are more secure than they've ever been, but not secure as they could be, was kind of what I think was our final analysis there.
Well, and there's a lot of confusion at LAX because of the two police departments and what their duties are and who does what. And in a major incident like the shooting that occurred over there,
you see the
active shooter.
You see what happened.
You saw it, and I propose or submit to you that's one of the reasons that TSA agent bled out is because it was the airport police initially who engaged the guy, put the suspect down, and then LAPD responded. Then they kind of took over everything, and they just stopped everything.
Right.
So paramedics couldn't get in, and nobody would take that guy out, and that guy bled out.
You're going to say something, sir.
And again, I'm way out there with this. I think one of the chief problems with airport security is when you go through TSA, you have to put, and I fly a lot, you have to put your mind in this state. Everybody here at TSA is here because some other shit didn't work out first. Nobody here at 8 years old said they wanted to do this fucking job.
Wow.
2,
wow.
They are not borrowing from the space program to get these people. You have to put these things in perspective.
I'm trying to keep a straight face. I have a lot of friends that work at TSA.
Well, think about it.
But there's a whole bunch of jokes.
How many friends at TSA do you know that 15 years ago was thinking they was going to work at TSA?
Well, there was no TSA was started 15 years
3.
ago.
Right.
Okay.
But I know what you're saying.
I got a lot of paint, dude. Okay, these people. 3. In my opinion, other than the conspiracy theory shit that I'm not going to spit out, 9/11 would be entirely avoidable, and situations like it, if we demanded that flight attendants knew more than how to buckle a seatbelt and how to serve peanuts. What if all of them had to be a black belt in some martial art in order to have that? Now, you don't have just victims walking the aisles. You have 4 black belts.
Okay,
not even
that's
air
true.
Marshals, black belts, because I have a 2nd-degree black belt in Shorey Goju. I was in the Marines. I used to box.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. I have friends who are comedians who also are nice with their hands, and a number of us have said, I'm not going to say I could have stopped 9/11, but you bet your sweet ass I'm not going to die in my seat, and I'm not going to die alone. All you got is a box cutter?
Sure.
Really?
Sure. And those of us who are not intimidated by that kind of thing understand. I understand we have a caller. We're going to get to that in a second. But here's the problem with that. Flight attendants have a union. And if you demand additional skill sets from people, then the union demands what in exchange?
Money.
They demand more money. And then the airline's going to get that money from who?
Passengers.
Exactly. And then airfare goes up, and then Delta has to charge more than American because American don't have black belts. And then Delta starts losing money because everybody's flying on American because American is cheaper. And that's just what we do in this country.
Well, yeah. Well, when your main motivator is something that doesn't even really exist, is just a concept, which is money, then you run into shit like this. You run in when you can't ask simple. That is what has America has gotten away from one of the tenets that made it great. It hasn't gotten away from its barbarism. It hasn't gotten away from its thievery. What it has gotten away from is its basics.
In terms
America
of what?
used to be a place where basic questions and basic answers led people's actions. Now there's so much euphemism and bullshit that
a lot of code.
Yes, that gets in the way. This is very simple. If somebody on this plane has an adverse agenda and there are 3 or more of them, shouldn't there be 3 or more people on staff ready, willing, and able to beat the fuck out of them? It's very simple.
Well, it'll never happen again. Nobody was ever going to sit in their seats unless somebody with a box cutter fly a plane into a building.
That's right.
That's never going to happen again.
And I think airline pilots now are allowed to carry weapons, right? And
they have a federal flight deck officer program.
That found that a lot of them now do.
A lot of them do. I have a friend who's a pilot for United Airlines.
I want to know what the hell happened.
He's a flight deck officer. He's also a black belt.
What the hell happened to the air marshals? Whatever happened to them?
They're around. A lot of them are on the ground, but they're around. Okay, so
let's get back on the.
Well, okay, let's do this. Is our caller still on the line, or do we lose? Okay, so let's bring our caller in before we go to break. Caller, what's your name and where you calling from?
Terrell from Chicago.
Terrell from Chicago. How you doing?
All right, Shot City, what's up?
What's going on? I just wanted to ask one question because I can kind of see where the show going. I just want to ask, do you think Alton Sterling deserved to die for resisting arrest?
You know what? We're going to get into that. We're going to spend the next half hour on that, Terrell. So I'm glad that you asked that question. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to make sure that we answer that question.
Right now, it sounds like a well-dressed no. I will say that.
That's okay.
All right, thank you.
So we're going to give you the answer. I promise you that. All right. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to get resituated, and then we're going to come back and jump into our topic, which is the killings of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, right here on the Ride Along Radio Show.
All right, mister, what do you think you're doing? You call this a room? Big slap!
All right, and welcome back to the Ride Along Radio Show. As I close the Krispy Kreme box, I didn't have any. I'm eating almonds today. So, all right. So, welcome back to the Ride Along Radio Show. I'm George Holt.
I'm Gil Contreras.
To my right, my right is Gil. To my left, my military left, is veteran crime reporter Frank Stolze.
Boom.
And to his left is comedian and social commentator Geoff Brown.
Don't you on the mic? That show is good donut, though. Just saying. I'll lean back. I'm going to have another one of them.
All right. So,
this was our day today, but that was me on the.
Oh, nice. Every day is training day.
Every day's training day.
Not Denzel training day.
You don't hear me
just
though.
like real training day.
Real training.
So, all right. So our topic today is the first topic, and again, it's kind of an unusual thing. We knew when we started this show. When was it? In September of last year?
It's been a minute.
Been a minute. That we would never run out of material. We knew that because between society and our brethren in blue, we knew that we would have loads of fresh material every week.
Right.
And typically that's been true. We've even had to bump topics that we were going to do when something else came up. We've done shows we weren't going to do at all when something else came up, right? So we're very current here. We like to think we are. And even this, though, caught us off guard because we'd already published. We're going to talk about the killing of Alton Sterling, and I'll talk about why that's phrased that way in a second. And then, of course, less than 24 hours later, we had the Facebook Live, not the killing or the shooting of Philando Castile, but his death was actually broadcast live.
Right.
Or streamed live on Facebook, which is
it's crazy what we can do now.
So one was killed, and the other one was what?
No, they're both killed.
Oh,
they're both killed, but we didn't see the killing on Facebook. We didn't see the action. We saw the result of Philando Castile.
Okay.
They're both killed, and I'll tell you why I phrase it that way.
Yeah, because it almost sounds like one of them fell on the bullets.
Because to take a neutral approach to this topic, because there's people who would tell you, in fact, one of the shows here talked about the murder of Alton Sterling, right? And some people would say the shooting. And to me, murder supposes that that's what it was. And only thing that we know for sure right now factually is that he was killed. Shooting is too gentle and too generic to me because I see your face expression. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah. Shooting, people get shot and don't die. So I didn't think shooting was strong enough. So I wanted to use killing because it is a statement of fact. It is irrefutable that these two people were killed, and they were killed by the police. That's not open to interpretation. That's not open to any legal wiggling or anybody trying to bend any terms. It's just what happened, and it's irrefutable.
That's right.
That's why the topics are the killing of Alton Sterling and the killing of Philando Castile, because that's exactly what happened, and there's no arguing that that's what happened. Everything else is a matter of opinion, but we know that they were killed. Does that make sense? Does that make more sense to you now? They were both killed. You can agree they were both killed?
I can agree, but it's just a
well, now you said ask a simple question and get to it, and with a simple answer.
It's a lot of shit under my fingernails right now, but I'm sure you're going to clear it up.
Well, no, I mean, simple question, simple answer. They were killed, clearly. And no matter where you stand on it, you got to agree that they were killed.
Well,
they didn't fall on the bullets. It wasn't suicide, as somebody tried to say.
I want to ask Frank Stolze this question because, Frank, you guys did a series recently called Officer Involved where you actually looked at officer-involved shootings. And some resulted in death and some didn't.
Right, exactly.
In your reporting, what's the term? What's the correct term for an officer?
I appreciate what you say because we pay attention to language in journalism.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes when we do say fatal shooting as opposed to killing, it may be subtle, but there's a difference.
There's a difference, sure. Legally, there's a difference. There's a difference in every aspect.
Legally, there's a difference, but
Sure.
in terms of how people react to that term, fatal shooting and killing, and I don't think it's ever intentional when we say officers fatally shot so and so. As opposed to officers killed so and so, sometimes it's just varying language just to shake up in terms of the creative process, which I'm sure you can appreciate. So it's not an intentional political effort.
You got 500 words. You don't want to use.
You mix it up. But I'm appreciating what you're saying right now in terms of the use of fatal shooting versus killing,
and that's all it was about.
Yeah.
That's all it was
because
about.
Certainly killing, in our language, is a stronger term.
Right, and if you say officers murdered somebody, that's an even stronger term.
Right, and that's why I wanted to stay away from that because here's why. I did not want to say it this way and alienate so many people who don't see it that way. I didn't want to say it that way and alienate so many people who don't see it that way without people tuning in. Our job is to engage the viewer, to get people to tune in and listen to this discussion.
Why don't you just hit it in the middle and let the shit fly where it flies?
That's what I did. That's why I said killing.
But you said that and again, this kind of goes to my point about the concept of using certain words to elicit a certain response or set a mindset of mass people in a certain way. Why not just say what you would say while you at 2 a.m. smoking weed in your drawers? I don't know if you do that. I do. I smoke weed in my drawers.
Okay.
And I say
no, I don't do that. I don't wear drawers. No, I'm kidding. I don't do either one.
Okay, all right, you commando. I can respect commando. Another left-handed commando. All right. I'm just saying. You said that you are picking words
but you said to elicit a response.
Alienate.
I said but I'm picking those words to not elicit a response.
No.
There's a difference.
Yes, but
I'm trying to be neutral.
Okay. Why? The concept of trying to be neutral, doesn't that kind of, I hate to use the term, whitewash the central theme of having a platform to say exactly what you mean?
Okay. I didn't say I'm going to be neutral all night long. I was neutral to get people to watch. Now we can go ham. Now that you're here, now we can talk about it.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
So, you got to lead, hey, man, bees and honey. Bees and honey, right?
Right.
Well, I think, the point he just made is a very important one. Because
about the whitewashing?
Exactly, because there's a lot of people that feel like that. There's a lot of people that say if you won't call that police shooting, if you won't call that murder, then you're trying to cover up for the cops.
We could probably have a few minutes on whitewashing and blackballing.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's move on.
The whole thing. All right. So let's
it's all kind of a gray area.
Thank you. Touche.
He's here all week. Actually, he's just here for a couple hours.
2 shows a day.
All right. So we're going to get into our first video. And the videos that are picked are they're just raw video. There's nobody speaking over them in terms of trying to influence you one way or another. It's just raw video. And we're going to watch both angles of the Alton Sterling shooting. The first one was the one everybody saw at first. It was shot from the people's perspective inside the car. And then we're going to talk about that. And then we'll get into the second video, which shows another angle where you can kind of see a little bit more of what was going on. And everybody's seen these videos by now, I take it, right? Everybody on the panel.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to roll the first one that was taken from inside the witness vehicle.
Oh shit! They shot him? Oh my fucking goodness!
Oh, they killed this boy!
Oh.
Okay, so that was the we just got news that we already knew about the shootings at the protest in Dallas, and we knew that officers had been injured. Apparently, one officer has passed away, and there's more that have been injured. And so everybody, and I mean everybody, be safe out there, because this is we knew that it would be kind of an out of control situation. I just didn't really expect it in a city that wasn't connected to that. I thought maybe we would have problems in Baton Rouge or maybe Minneapolis, but. Okay, so we just saw.
It's interesting. Dallas is interesting. It's
and not because neither one of these incidents happened in that city is what I mean.
But Dallas has a real history too.
Because when we had Rodney King, right? Detroit, as I recall, Detroit didn't riot when we had Rodney King. If they did, they didn't riot on the same scale. That's what I mean by not connected.
Well, we are far. I think we already discussed this with the concept of right now. While you're filming, I could film you and send it to Tokyo now.
That's true. Everybody's connected. That's
everyone
true.
is connected.
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone.
But everybody saw the Rodney King beating too.
Everybody saw the beating, but again, sadly, it's kind of like what we used to say in boot camp. If you get enough people together and treat them all like shit, they begin to galvanize.
Right, and that's exactly why they do that in boot camp. So listen, let's circle back around and get on this video. So that was the first video that everyone saw. It was the video that sparked the outrage, and it was one of the first times, not the only time, but it was one of the more recent times where we had someone actually killed by the police on tape, where people could see what was going on and what led up to that. We saw that with Walter Scott, but that was just straight up. Everybody knew what that was. There was nobody. I didn't hear one police officer try to defend what happened to Walter Scott. That was just straight up murder. That was somebody running away and getting shot in the back.
Yeah.
This is a situation where we have people. You're actually watching an altercation and watching it escalate from officer standing up, contacting somebody, going to the ground. There's a struggle and it ends in gunshot. So. Okay, now we're saying 10 officers shot, 3 were killed.
Wow.
So Dallas PD, prayers up for Dallas PD. Everybody be safe, though, and watch your six.
Yeah, apparently the suspect used a rifle, so they were
AR-15.
Yeah, handguns up against the rifle. So.
Yeah, that's and somebody was saying it had been a peaceful protest, and then it actually went sideways after that. So again, everybody be safe, and let's not let that situation spiral out of control, because it's clear that's where it'll head if there's not some order restored one way or another. And
the thing is, you're not going to win that.
No, you can't win. You can't. Society can't allow you to win that. Nope. So, let's not let this turn into a big ugly mess that nobody wants, because really nobody wants that. We talked about Rodney King situation. Now you say that, but nobody wants it. And here's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
How many people died? How many people died as a result of the Rodney King riots, uprising, rebellion, whatever you want to call it?
I think it was 30, 20 something.
How many of them were police officers?
I don't know.
Not one. We had a firefighter get shot in the face. He didn't die. A lot of people got killed during that riot, and it wasn't anybody that people were mad at. The only person that really got injured was a fireman who had nothing to do with any of that.
In any war, there's casualties.
Okay, but what I'm saying is the people who you're mad at didn't sustain the casualties. It was the people who were mad that sustained the casualties. In this situation, I'm telling you right now what's going to happen. You cannot expect a war on police and not expect some very, very, very serious backlash. Geoff is thinking, because we're both left-handed commandos, I'm reading his mind, and he's thinking, but the police have already declared war on the community. That's what you're thinking, aren't you?
No.
What were you going to say? What were you thinking?
I was going to say that it's a bit short-sighted to basically what you're looking at is a bunch of people who feel like they're out of normal recourse options.
Sure.
This is where you get all Muslims are crazy and they just hate us. They hate us because we have titty bars in Magic Mountain. No. No. Okay? there is something
Right,
that
and I've been saying that
driving
for
a
years. There's
person
something
to strap a bomb on themselves and walk in and release it, and nobody wants to talk about. All you want to talk about is 5.
You're absolutely right.
Nobody wants to talk about 2 + 3.
And it's the same thing when people show up at their job and they go off.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's typically because they felt like they were out of options, right or wrong.
Absolutely.
But
that's why you always got to be nice to the mailroom.
Let me jump on our call because I want the producer to look at me like she did last time and say, well, I hope the caller's still on the goddamn line, George.
Miss Morris don't play.
So
let's all get this call.
But we'll get to that. Caller, what's your name and where you calling from?
This is David. I'm calling from Monterey Park.
Hey, David, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, so what's up, David? How can we help you? What's on your mind?
What on my mind? How can you get those guys like what you said there on the TSA, a better training person, and how can we deal with this, escalate the situation on a Missouri cop shooting that an armed black person?
Okay. Thank you for your call, David. I'll give you that answer off air if anybody wants to jump on that. I'll let you jump on that.
Well, there are some things that we can do, and I wanted to get to because I even got I got a text message from David Cruz today, and we're going to talk tomorrow. David wants to know, Gil, we all know both sides of the issue now, but what can be done? And from my perspective, there are some things that can be done, but I want to save those for towards the end of the show.
Okay, sure. All right. So David, stick around. And Gil will give you your answers. You were saying something, and Gil, you were going to react before we took our call.
Yeah. David made my train of thought derail, though.
Okay, so listen. Let's talk about what we saw.
Yeah.
In this incident.
I just came back to me.
Okay. Total recall.
The guy that you talked about strapping on bombs, who's not blowing this up because of titty bars in Disneyland. You're absolutely right. It's not about that. It's about building a new caliphate and imposing Islam on the world. That's what that's about.
Really? So it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with the fact that as a country, and this does not come. And we're gonna get back on topic.
Yeah, please, let's do it.
I promise. This is the last thing I will say that is off topic. You cannot call me or any other black serviceman anything less than patriotic. Black people are the most patriotic of any people on this country. To the shit that we got put through in World War I and World War II after fighting for this country and coming back, and before that, the Civil War, black people are the most patriotic. I am a United States Marine. I am telling you that people in other countries are tired of America showing up and not leaving. There's not one place on this earth that we have gone that we are not still there. These people are not just trying to make you pray 5 times a day to the east.
What do you mean, though? But we bring McDonald's and Coca-Cola franchises.
Some folk
they don't like that?
want McDonald's
They
and
don't
Coke.
like that?
Yes.
But we bring blue jeans and Nikes and stuff.
Some folks don't want Nikes.
They don't want to listen to MTV.
You don't bring them for free, goddammit. You bring them to make more money.
We bring Michael Jackson records and stuff.
Some folks don't like Michael Jackson. There are Bedouins who have no idea about
Michael
technology.
Jackson is, exactly.
Exactly.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. That's another topic. We can drill into that.
Okay.
So let's back to the
back on this
Sterling.
shit.
Let me add one last thing about the situation in Dallas. We're in Lamert Park. I don't know if we usually say that or usually say that, but
that's as close as we get.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we are not far from the park itself.
Right, far.
Lamert Park. You guys probably passed the
all the time.
Pretty small protests that was going on there earlier. Maybe 50 folks. A couple TV cameras, local news, but a very almost invisible LAPD presence, and I just want to point this out. I know that part of the thinking at the LAPD now is to not have a big show of presence at these kinds of protests, knowing that they provoke.
Right. Well, there's anti-police protests. It provokes.
And if you show up with 300 guys in riot gear,
and bats and hats,
bats and hats.
And why would you show up if there's no reason for you?
But that's the old thinking.
That was the old
That's
thinking.
exactly how they would show up.
We learned that in late '80s, early '90s.
But not all departments have across the country. I mean, one of the things you guys know, and certainly I've learned in crime reporting, is there are different cultures police department cultures.
Definitely.
And
there's different different police department cultures in L.A. County alone.
This is no way to explain or excuse or figure out what happened in Dallas with this sniper. But I'm just pointing out, how LAPD tends to handle these things most of the time. I'm only saying most of the time because I've also seen them come in hot and heavy.
Right.
Still,
and escalate situations sometimes.
Right, but they're very resistant. They're very reticent now about coming in and using too much force. And if you talk to officers at that department now, they're almost turning into officer-friendly, driving by and waving.
Well, and the criticism, the flip side is, that they do a lot of surveilling of protesters, watching their social media accounts
from inside the crowd. Sometime too. Was I supposed to say that?
Pushing, right? Sure, undercover, pushing the limit on civil liberties. Certainly,
I can't
certainly
believe you
some
said
protest
that. Nobody
groups,
even thought that until you said it.
Some groups would say,
hey,
pushing the line.
Nothing like working crowd control and seeing one of your friends in the crowd.
But I'd say one of the good things too is I think that they've gotten a little bit better at community relations. Touching base with protest leaders in advance. So it's I'm just pointing out LAPD is a mixed bag. It's a mixed story.
Right.
But it's not,
one of the good points is they don't come in hot and heavy every time.
And it's not the 1992 LAPD.
Not at all. So listen, I know you guys want to get back on topic. Let me reassure you, we're actually going to go until 10 o'clock tonight. So we're going into a extended watch. We're going into overtime, as we say tonight, because we have so much material and such a large, well-informed panel. So on this first video, we saw officers contact Alton Sterling, and we saw. Now this is looking at the video. There's other things that came out later, backstory-wise, that you need to know to help you understand why they contacted him, because some people say, well, he was just selling DVDs out of his trunk. Why did that elicit such a police response? But that's not why they were there. They weren't there because he was selling DVDs out the trunk. They were there because someone had called and said that he threatened them with a gun. Now, that's why they contacted him, and I think that's a totally legitimate reason to contact somebody. Somebody had a question. In fact, it was Cameron Jackson in the Rollout chat room that said, and I know you had a long question, Cameron, but I'm going to break down to the last sentence. If they knew he had a gun from the onset, why did they take such an antagonistic approach in the first place? And I think that he's referring to the tactics of how you approach someone who is armed or is possibly armed. And I think we could break that down and see where they certainly could have done that better and maybe got a different outcome in terms of contacting someone who you've been told has a gun. And has threatened somebody with it. Typically, you don't walk up on that person and go hands-on. You don't walk up on that person without having what we have covered, two officers, one's cover, one's contact. So I don't think that was done in a manner that's consistent with best practices of law enforcement. So that's one thing there. Then they go to contact him. He is non-compliant. My understanding is they use a taser. And was the taser ineffective? Was that what it was?
Yes.
The taser was ineffective?
Correct.
And, let me tell you something about that taser. When taser came out, we were told that the taser was the end-all, be-all, that the taser was going to reduce officer injuries. The taser was going to put an end to fights. The taser was going to let a 120-pound officer take down a 320-pound suspect with no problem. All you had to do was administer a dose of what they called the Edison medicine. If you made them ride the lightning for 5 seconds, you could take anybody into custody. And we've seen that we get out in the real world, and that taser is not the panacea that we have been led to believe that it was. It's pretty effective when it works right. The problem is it doesn't always work right, just like most things that you apply in real life. What you do in a training scenario is one thing. What you do in real life is something else. So that didn't work.
Parenthetically, I'll just say a lot of people don't understand, and it took me a long time. When you shoot a taser and those two darts shoot out, both have to make contact.
That's right,
and they have to make contact properly.
Right,
yes.
Oh
and so if you have heavy clothes on, or if only one hits,
then you're going to have a problem.
You're going to
have nothing but
nothing.
I can't take it.
Go ahead, Geoff.
Okay. Let's take a good look at these two cops. In my opinion, police uniforms, like Marine uniforms, only come so big. If you don't fit them, then you're unfit. These were two fat, greasy motherfuckers who had no business, in my opinion. If you two cannot take down one dude by yourself, I'm not bragging. I know that you have a weapon on your left side. If I have the element of surprise, you are at a disadvantage with me being this close with that weapon. Why? Because you depend upon that weapon, which makes everything on this table your enemy with me sitting here. And I'm just a plain old United States Marine. Okay? There are 294,000 of us available at any time.
And I'm a humble public radio reporter, so I'm going to get out if something like that's going to happen.
You're right.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
And you're absolutely
I'm nice.
right.
You see me in a fight with a bear, jump in and help the bear.
I agree with you, Geoff, that the element of surprise is huge.
No. I'm not discussing the element of surprise with these two gentlemen. I'm discussing the element of preparedness.
Okay.
I am so tired of hearing cops, I'm afraid for my life. Well guess what? In the words of Biggie Small, don't be mad, UPS is hiring. Maybe this ain't your job.
I think you were on a line of thinking there. You were going to do tactics. You did tactics and approach. You did taser. And then I assume you were going to do
this is called the escalation of force.
Right.
So
this is called the escalation of force.
Were you going to evaluate the firing of the weapon as well? Is that your next?
This is we break it down in terms of the escalation. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you that other video from the other angle. And by that, I think the time that video started rolling, he was already on the ground because the taser didn't work. They went in to go hands-on and make contact with him and took him to the ground or somehow ended up on the ground. I don't know if they purposely took him to the ground or they just ended up on the ground just through combat. The dynamics of combat, they ended up on the ground. But they were on the ground, and then we're going to roll what we got now, and you'll see the second video.
Hey, bro! You fucking move, I swear to God! Hey, boss! Hey, get on the ground! Careful, man. 16 man, keep shots fired. Fuck!
Okay. And so what we saw from that angle, which is a little better than the angle that was taken from the inside the car because the distance is closer, and it's just a better angle to see what's going on the other side of the car somewhat. Mm-hmm. You can see people's hands a little bit better. You can kind of see what's going on.
What did you learn?
Okay. So what we saw was the officers were actually attempting to take him into custody. Mm-hmm. He was being non-compliant, which is another topic that we will going to get on, believe me, about compliance. Mm-hmm. Because this instance, like many others, not all of them, but many others began with non-compliance. He was non-compliant. They're fighting. Remember now, someone's already told them that he's got a gun. Mm-hmm. And apparently at a certain point, I don't know if the officer felt the gun in his pocket or he saw the outline of somehow the officer knew that he had a gun. I can't see where his hands are going to know that he's reaching for that gun or not. I do know that he was told, if you fucking move, I'm going to shoot you. I think the officer said, I swear to God, I'll fucking shoot you. Now, I don't know at what point when you hear those words that you don't just stop and comply. This doesn't mean, because the question was asked earlier by Terrell from Chicago, was did he deserve to die for resisting arrest? People resist arrest every day, and they don't get killed. Every day. Somebody's resisting arrest right now.
And no one deserves to die.
Nobody deserves to die for resisting arrest. No. The answer to your question is no. He did not deserve to die for resisting arrest. That is not a crime punishable by death. Resisting arrest typically is not something, being resistant is not enough typically to put an officer in a position where they feel that their life is threatened. However, keep in mind, they were told he had a gun. Turns out he did have a gun. We saw that. It was clearly not planted because the officer pulled it right out of his pocket, right on video, in front of everybody. And apparently, what the officer is going to say that he was making some moves for the gun, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I will say this, and this is my take on it, and then I'll just pass it around. My take on it is that there were other options.
Absolutely.
Other than discharging that weapon. People say, well, in fact, I called in yesterday on Rollout Show, and Speedy had a question about why was there a gunshot wound to his back. It's because he was laying on a hard surface. And if there's any gunshot wounds to his back and show up in an autopsy, it's going to be that ricochet coming back up and creating trauma in his back as it's passed through his chest cavity, hit that asphalt,
and
bounced back through. So that's why you would have that. And it's not that he was shot in the back. The video clearly shows he was not shot in the back. So there were other options. You have two officers who were fighting somebody, and I'll give them credit. They weren't hesitant. They were actually in there fighting. I've seen officers and heard of officers stand by terrified while their partner's putting in all the work. We've seen that before. I've experienced it before. So these officers did engage the person. They did engage Alton Sterling, and they were attempting to take him into custody. He was fighting. He did have a gun. Is it legally justifiable? I think you're going to find that it was legally justifiable.
Yes.
Was it something I would have done? No, it's not something that I would have done, because I think that there's other options there, especially with two officers, especially with the capabilities that you have with two officers on top of somebody like that. I just think that, I don't think you should let him give an opportunity to get into his pocket and pull that gun out.
Right.
That's what you don't do.
That's right.
He cannot be allowed to get his hand in that pocket on that gun. He don't even have to even pull it out. If he gets his hand in his pocket on that gun, he can fire it from within his pocket. So you can't let him get his hand on that gun. But as we saw, his hand never made into the pocket to where the gun was. The gun never came out of his pocket. And I think, if anything, the officers shot too soon. I don't know if it was going to go there if they hadn't done it, but I think that there was a window of opportunity, and the officer jumped on it immediately and maybe a little bit too soon. Again, I think that's legally defensible.
And I just want to add this. When you're rolling on the ground like that and you're wrestling around with somebody, if your partner says, "Partner, he's got a gun," I'm not going to check.
Right. You're going to take your partner's word for it.
You're going to take your partner's word and you're going to shoot.
Okay. Can I jump out here?
Let me ask one question before you do. You mentioned you faulted the tactics.
Yes.
Can you be a little more specific on that?
Okay, so you roll up on a scene, and this is Police Academy 101, okay? This is halfway through the Police Academy. You're practicing this. You think a suspect's got a gun. What you don't do is you don't walk up on that person like that. You don't walk up on that person where you don't have the advantage of cover, okay? What you're supposed to do is stop, take cover, present your firearm, because the person, you've been told the person's got a gun. You got every right. You've been told that this is an armed suspect. You have every right to draw your gun on that person from cover and give them commands. That way, if the guy goes in his pocket, produces a gun, you got some cover at least, and you have the tactical advantage. And you give commands from there. Now, at a certain point, once you get that person to comply, somebody's going to have to break cover, move into contact. That's why we call it cover and contact.
I think this is a really important point. I mean,
because tactics, yes.
Because I know it's a tough decision when you move in and you're a black belt. So when you go hands on that's a really important decision, right? That's a judgment. When you've been around for a while.
But that doesn't make them criminally liable. Bad tactics don't make you criminally liable.
And that's
one of the key I think discussions in law enforcement nowadays is cops more often need to take cover, create distance, so they create the time to make better decisions.
Right, because George just talked about
fat or not.
What if cops created relationships?
Well, that's a great point.
That's too late for that at that point.
That's a great point. But let me parenthetically add one other thing. This is Zell Ford shooting that happened a couple years ago.
For sure.
The police commission found one of the officers who shot him out of policy because of said the shooting was bad because the tactics were bad, which was an unheard of decision. Because usually the police commission would say, all your tactics could be terrible, but because at the moment you had created the situation, but because at the moment you had to shoot him, even though you created the bad situation.
Right. That's called precipitation.
So the commission for the first time said, "Wait a minute, you can't create these crazy situations.
And
you're going to be liable for the shooting itself."
Chief Beck
it's important.
Chief Beck just did the same thing about 2 weeks ago with a female officer that got into a fight
with the taser.
With a taser, the exact same thing happened.
So
fellas,
your tactics have to be right.
We are really the elephants in this room are piling up. Okay, first off, something that has been done away with that I think should be implemented for people who need police is you should have to live in the area that you police.
That's easy to say until you realize that you live in the area that you have to police.
Okay, well, that's lost on me because of the areas that I have lived in. The police, where I have lived, and you have to understand, I come from the south side of Chicago in the 70s.
Okay.
Maybe it's different other places, but we never went, hey, everything's going great, let's call the cops. Okay? The cops never, ever, from my experience, did anything that we needed done because in my neighborhood, the gangsters ran my neighborhood, and there was no, you wasn't breaking in no houses, you wasn't doing no raping. You know why? Because you fucking up our money. Okay? So we didn't have those things to worry about, but I'm off topic. My point is this, is that you are discussing the LAPD against the good old boys in Baton Rouge. Okay? And I don't think that they were trained. No. They weren't trained like you were trained. Are you willing to stake? Because as you sit here, and as you two gentlemen, I see you sit here every week, and from what I can tell, you're a gentleman of color. You're cops here. You're cops on this show. Do you think you're a cop in Baton Rouge? Do you think you are at face value?
I'm not sure.
Here's what I'm saying. What I am saying is that there is a mental conditioning that has gone on in this country for centuries that allows people to see people of color as less than human, because I have not seen yet two black officers. I wonder if two black officers held a white dude down and shot him, would this show be going the same way? And not because of what you have to say, but because of what society has to say. These dudes had no business in uniform. If you cannot, this is just me from Chicago.
Do you want to add the class analysis as well?
Wow. Well, no. That's when you really get deep, because that's all racism is about, is keeping the power elite where they are.
I only say that because there was a black officer who shot a homeless white dude in Venice.
Black officers get very little room for me because they're generally dealing with people of color. That's rare. That's your
depends on what division
you're trying to compare the horse.
Yeah.
You're trying to compare the whole horse with one shoe.
But I think what I'm saying is this: shot tend to be poor.
What I am saying is simply this: is that these dudes had this is me from Chicago. If I was a police officer,
okay,
how you doing, man? I got a call that you got a piece on you. This is gonna go real bad if you go for that piece. I don't want that to happen. So let's do this. Please put your hands on this car. This officer is going to check your weapon. Do you have a problem with that?
Okay, and to me, in my LA police mind, that's way too much dialogue. At that point, what you're supposed to do is you pull up, you take cover, you take command of the situation, and there ain't no asking them about anything. You're going to do what I'm telling you to do, which is get your hands out of your pockets, put your hands where I can see them, move over here, put your hands on that car, and then while you still have them covered, somebody makes contact.
And that's it. And that in itself is an issue, because I saw this with my own father. When I was about 8, my father got pulled over, and this young white police officer comes up to the window, and Chicago cops are notoriously dirty. Yeah. Their cars dirty, their uniform dirty, so you know they dirty. That's the difference between LAPD.
That's how that was,
LAPD, they ride around in real nice cars, they in shape, and they'll beat you down right in front of your family. Okay, this is I'm sorry, that's funny. That probably hasn't happened. Okay, anyway.
It's just the way you put it. It's your delivery. Maybe because you're a comic. I don't know.
Yeah.
This dude pulled my father over, and he came up to the window, and he was being very disrespectful to my father. And my father said,
in front of your family, in front of you guys,
in front of us. And my father, which is one of the things that models my manhood, my father said, "Listen, son, I'm gonna take the ticket or the lecture.
Right.
I'm not taking both.
Right. Sure."
He said, "You're gonna respect me tonight." He said, "It's not my respect you want. It is my fear, and you don't get to have that. Because gun and all, I am not afraid of you. I am here with my family. And if they see, this is my father, if they see me die now, they will not see me as a coward. And all he had to do was be respectful. That is one of the things that is sadly lacking in law enforcement, is that a lot of police officers, a lot of y'all was just picked on wearing black socks to gym class, and now you got a gun. There's okay, I'm sorry, those guys don't exist.
Part of what you said is that it was a young officer.
Yes.
That's a huge part of the problem.
Dude, just so
part of the problem.
Okay, one, the chief part is that when I walk up to you or any man, I see you first as a man and then as a human being, and then I see your color. I don't believe that police officers are trained to deal with shit that way, because what you want, you don't want respect. You want entire submission, and entire submission is what you get from animals. I expect cooperation from my wife. I expect submission from my dog, and it is that.
Okay, but in a situation where you've been threatening people with a gun,
yes,
and we show up, I'm expecting submission.
Reportedly.
Well, this all we can go on is what the caller said, right?
Exactly. So what
I'm expecting submission.
What if he's lying?
But you're also keeping an open mind, because
I'm keeping an open mind that it could maybe not be the case.
Absolutely. No, you're not. No, you're not. Because you said that you're going to take cover and draw your weapon. Now, that is what I...
Because that's me erring on the side of caution.
To me, no. You know what that is?
I got a family too, and I need to model manhood for them too.
Absolutely. You know what that is? That is something that was in the movie The Professional. The main character said, the better you are as an assassin, the closer you can be to your target.
Okay.
The better I am at my job, I don't see myself going home in a body bag. I don't see myself harming others by walking up to a dude who I heard has a gun, keeping safe distance, and going, hey, man, I'm Officer Brown. How you doing tonight?
And you're going to have this conversation with somebody just told you pointed a gun at somebody.
Absolutely, because I got a friend with a badge and a gun, and friends with badges and guns, and this shit will go really bad for him really fast if this dude, contact and cover. If my partner, I'm going to look here, watch this motherfucker. If he twitch, give him a new eye.
Okay,
hey,
see?
How you doing?
There
No, that's him. This is me. This is me. I'm going to give him the human advantage first. How you doing, man? You ain't out here with a gun because the Golden State lost. There's some shit going on in your life. How you doing, brother? I hear that you have a gun. I don't know if you have a permit for it. We're not there yet. The problem is that you out in front of this place with a gun, and this is not a gun range. I'm going to need you to put your hands on that car. Right there, I am respectful to him first. Y'all don't believe in respect first. And it is because in my opinion, you deal with society's shit so much that everything you come in contact with begins to resemble or smell like shit. And it might be because of the shit on your hands or the fact that you've been dealing with shit all day. So when you deal with everybody other than people in blue uniforms, you deal with them from this shit mind perspective, as opposed to, dude, I'm walking up on a dude with a gun. This dude don't want to be out here with this gun. It's some other shit going on in his life.
Okay,
I have to respect
you're giving somebody the benefit of the doubt, and you're risking your life to do so. Why is it that person? Why are you going to put yourself in a situation? Because let me tell you something. Here's what's going to happen, Officer Brown. Sergeant Holt's going to sit there, and when you walk up on that person without any cover, and that person goes in their pocket and pulls a gun out, and you shoot that guy and you kill him, I'm going to say, what the hell did you do that for? You precipitated that shooting by bad tactics. By walking up on that guy without any cover, you put yourself in a situation where you had to shoot.
I don't think he said no cover. I think he's got.
He said that. He said he was going to walk up and contact the person while his cover officer was back there.
Okay, let's
explore
that. Let's explore that.
My bad tactics. Go to a break here in a second, Miss Moas, as you call her.
Okay, my bad tactics.
Shoot us a side eye.
My bad tactics give this man an out. And I am willing to do that. And perhaps, forgive my naivete, perhaps my training is somewhere beneath that of the gentleman in the video, but I don't see that as having to happen that way. As a matter of fact, again, I say, the closer I get to you and you have a weapon of any kind,
Sure.
the more you are at a disadvantage because
Sure.
of how fragile the human body is. I'm not a police officer.
Okay.
Dude, I got a black belt. It's a belt that's black now because I'm 51 with a pot gut and bad knees. But my point is simply this. If some dude working with a Chicago high school public education from the 80s and Mythbusters can come up with, hey, there's another way. Why is it that these people who are supposed to be trained professionals, okay? If my uncle fucks up my brakes, I can't be mad because he's not a professional.
Okay.
These
Sure.
dudes are supposed
But
to be
you're missing one key
professionals.
part of the equation. The guy from Mythbusters can experiment and fuck up and fuck up and fuck up till he gets it right. You can't be gambling with your life in the street like that. You're not going to experiment when everything is riding on the line. Everybody wants to go home to
How
their
is that a
family.
gamble?
Well, you just said that. You just talked about
How is
figuring
that
out
a
a
gamble?
better way. That's a hell of a gamble.
If I'm standing here, I got I don't prefer a 9. I can't hit shit with a 9. I'm better with a 45.
Okay.
I got my 45 holster unclipped, safety's off, and I walk up with my hand on my shit. I go, hey man, how you doing? I understand you have a gun, unless this motherfucker is a quick draw artist.
You don't know.
Well, particularly if
you know what?
Particularly if you've got your partner who's
Thank you.
already
My partner
drawn.
is my partner is on. My partner may not
And
be drawn,
you're gonna
but my
get
partner is
done
on
for
this
precipitation.
dude. Here's the
you
problem.
You guys. Okay. Here's where we play the expert card.
Okay.
All right. So both of us have not only been in the streets and been trained to be in the streets.
Yes.
We've also trained others.
Okay.
To do that. I've been a supervisor in 2 police agencies.
Okay.
And what you're describing is a situation that would work if you knew that person wasn't a quick draw artist. If you knew that person, if you weren't gambling with your life. But what happens is if you put yourself in that situation and then you are forced to shoot because you didn't have any cover because you walked up on a person that you already told had a gun, you're going to have a problem. Now, you may not be criminally prosecuted, but you ain't going to have a job. You're going to be a UPS like Biggie Smalls said.
Of course.
Well,
And you know what?
I can play both sides of this argument because I'm, journalists. We have no opinion.
Right.
But
I hear that some of you have an agenda, though.
I will say. I think we also have to appreciate, that rank and file police officers, whether in Los Angeles or Baton Rouge or Peoria. First of all, they're not great shots. There are only a few that are really good shots and really quick on the draw.
Yeah.
They're a lot of
That's
times
a problem.
A lot of times they're pretty average guys. And so you, as a 51-year-old dude who's been in the hood and a mature man who also is able to defend himself, I can easily see you pulling that one off. But the 24-year-old dude, who doesn't have that sense of physical confidence, who hasn't been in as many situations as you and I have been in, can handle themselves, may not. So leaving cover, the only thing I'm sort of wondering about is the idea of leaving cover.
Well,
I like the idea. I think I would agree that the verbal skills have to change.
Sure, that's
there
important.
has to be better
That's
interaction. Then it cannot be the old days where shut the hell up and do what I say.
Did you just tell me? Maybe somebody help me out. Did you just describe? It sounded like you described somebody who was mentally inarticulate, which, by the way, the brain is not fully developed until 25, which makes most of you, even as a young man, they're functionally retarded.
Parenthetically, there have been arguments that cops should be at least 25.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you know what? And I don't. As an officer who was hired at
Raised.
23, I don't disagree with that.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
that's a
so what
really
you're telling
interesting
me,
question.
what you're telling me is that this individual may not be professional enough to do one of the most dangerous jobs on the planet. Who the fuck hired this dude?
Well,
that's where you need to do. What y'all being taught and who's hiring you, I just don't. Well, I do get, but that's a whole nother show. This concept that the only way to handle this is from back here with my gun because I'm afraid for my life. Well, you know what, dude? Maybe you need another job.
No,
and maybe
you're
that's
not going to
coming.
take unnecessary risks. And let me say this. We're not going to put ourselves in a dangerous situation because think about this. That's going to happen over and over and over again in your career.
Yes.
Eventually, you're going to fuck up and end up in a box. Okay? You're going to roll the dice one too many times trying to be officer friendly. If I was told you have a gun, I'm rolling up on you. We're not about to have a fucking board meeting about it. You're going to do what I told you to do. This is not a negotiation process. And then And when you've complied and you are handcuffed and I know that everything is cool, man, I'll answer any questions you have.
That's right.
And if I was wrong, man, I'm going to dust you off.
That's
if
right.
I got to give you a ride back to your house, I'll do whatever I need to do at that point because it's not personal. But I'm not going to put myself in a situation because I'm not trying to win any PR awards by putting myself in unnecessary danger. Because putting myself in unnecessary danger actually puts you in unnecessary danger. So think about that.
Whoa. How much more unnecessary danger could the dude on the ground be in? This dude's in a box right now, okay?
Right, because they didn't handle it like I'm talking about.
Yes,
you know what they did?
and they didn't handle it like I'm talking about.
You know what they did, Jeff? They walked up and got too close like you're talking about.
No.
That's what they did.
No, that's
exactly
not what I
they did.
said. No, that's not what I said. They were way too close to begin with. If too close, I'm sorry. I've maybe because I don't know. I'm willing to say that I have probably been injured and shot at just as much as the two of you. I bet you. I've probably been in more fights.
Sure, being given with your service, I can go with that.
Okay.
Coming from Chicago, et cetera. Sure,
I am not talking out of school when I am explaining to you how fragile the human body is.
Sure it is.
How fragile, how this close, honestly, if you had to use your weapon against me at this close, you are at a disadvantage. There are microphones here. What if this was full of hot coffee?
Sure.
I'm just a guy. You are meaning to tell me that these people who we put our lives in their hands every fucking day cannot figure another way to disarm another fat dude with a gun other than wrestle him to the ground and kill him? You dudes are
here's the
shitty
problem.
at your
and
jobs.
We're going to go to the break here, but let me end on this note temporarily. That got to that point because once you're there, man, it's really hard to back out of that. Mm-hmm. So once they found themselves there, they had to deal with the shit sandwich they helped create. And that's what happened. They are there, too close, on top of him. He's non-compliant, and they had limited options at that point.
So he couldn't hit him in the throat? You know what a 250-pound man says when you hit him in the throat?
Let me ask you a question, though. Is that something, you know what that's considered in law enforcement?
What?
That's considered deadly fucking force, just like shooting somebody. That's deadly force.
Okay.
So what's the difference?
The difference is that none of the guys that I've hit in the throat are dead by my hand. They all just figured out that they didn't know how to fight. Okay? That's the difference. If they had hit this dude in the throat, we would not be sitting here right now because we would be talking about a dude that got took down, that had a gun in his hand by a dude that's capable in front of him. I promise you, this has happened to me at least 4 times.
I don't disagree that we should have better fighters in law enforcement. I do not disagree with that at all.
At gunpoint 4 times. Do you know how many times I walked away with my safety and my money? 4 times. Do you know why? Because the dude with the gun was stupid. He was too close to me.
Okay, but you're a black belt.
Oh, I'm not a professional. I am not.
If you're a black belt, you're by definition a master.
Oh, I tell you what. It only takes 3 years. Why is it?
Well, police academy ain't that long, but listen.
No. Okay,
but
police academy ain't that long,
break,
but
though.
why isn't that a prerequisite? Why is it that...
there's ground fighting and there should be more fighting, and I'd agree with you, and we'll talk about how we softened police academies like we touched on it last week after the break. So we're going to go to a break, but listen, I didn't give out the number, but some people have had it anyway. 323-293-3375. You can send us a tweet at Right Along Radio. We're going to come right back and get back with our guests and our panel and our topic, and we'll see you in a minute. All right, and welcome back to the Right Along Radio Show. Our topic today are the killings of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. And we've been kind of wrapping up the Alton Sterling incident. We're going to get into the Philando Castile shooting here, or killing here in a bit. But, you know, one of the things that I always say, and it's kind of become my tagline. If I was to have
it's not the pendulum.
I know, not that. I was going to bring the pendulum out. Somebody asked me to bring the pendulum out tonight just to infuriate you. But I haven't had an opportunity to bring it out. But it's coming. So, JJ, watch for it. I'm going to bring it out. I'm going to whip it out on him if I can. But I always say comply now, complain later. And I've been saying that since last year. And what the people have said to me is, well, that's apparently bullshit.
Yes.
Because in the Philando Castile situation, he did comply. In the situation where Officer Sean Grover shot the man in South Carolina at the gas station for reaching into the car to get the documents the officer asked him to get, he was compliant. So people say, well, damn, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. Why should I comply if it's just going to mean that I'm going to end up dead anyway? And what I say to that is, it's like, since we've been sitting here on talking since 8:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time tonight, there have been several people killed in traffic accidents nationwide. Just statistically speaking, it has to be the truth. Mm-hmm. Those people were probably, most of them, wearing their seatbelts. It doesn't mean the seatbelt's going to save you, but it does mean that you still need to put your seatbelt on when you go. It's not going to save you every time, but there are times when it will save you, because there's a whole bunch of other people who survived traffic accidents tonight because they were wearing their seatbelts. So I look at comply now, complain later, the same way as I tell people to wear a seatbelt. It's not going to save your ass every time.
So just roll the dice.
It is foolish not to. Well, what choice do you have? Because we see what non-compliance gets you.
No. You
right?
may be
We see what
asking the wrong
non-compliance
person.
gets.
You may be asking the wrong person. One, when I am pulled over, when the lights go on behind me, this is what I teach my sons. You pull over. You put on your hazard lights. You turn on the dome light in the car. You shut off the engine. And you keep your hands on the steering wheel. When the officer walks up to the window, if your window is up, you wait till he asks you to put it down. When he does, you don't say one word. He will tell you, good evening. The reason I pulled you over was because you were speeding or weaving or whatever.
Not always.
Okay.
They should, but not always.
This has been my experience. Okay. I can only speak from my own experience.
Okay.
This is what I say. Officer, my wallet, my license is in my wallet. The registration and insurance to my car is in that glove box. I have a weapon. I am coming from the range. It is unarmed. It is unloaded. My rounds are in the trunk. My .45 is in a lockbox right behind me. Which would you like to have first? Right then, I have shown him I am articulate, I'm not drunk, I'm not combative, and he gonna go home tonight. If he doesn't, it's not gonna be because of me. Okay. He knows those things standing out there. Now, if that falls upon an individual who does not give a damn, that's not really the way I feel, who does not give a fuck about what I just did, then it doesn't matter. And what you are basically saying, you are basically saying is, well, folks, just roll the damn dice. And folks tired of crapping out, bruh. That's all I'm telling you. Let me tell you this, though. Since we're talking about that, yes, you being compliant, if the officer's in a space where they're not trying to hear that, they're not going to be trying to hear it no matter how compliant And then what happens? They go to court and they get off.
You not being compliant takes every officer and puts them in that space.
I'm not telling people to be non-compliant. What I am saying is that the concept, yes. Well, that's my question to you. That's not your question to me. The concept that compliance may work on a professional is some bullshit. I don't expect my car to maybe start
99.99% of the time. It's like your car's going to start 99.99% of the time.
Guess who's responsible for the yes?
Can I throw in a twist here?
In just a second. Here, this is the perfect time to
save that twist, though. I want to hear it.
This is a perfect time for my little test.
Okay.
You two are retired police officers, yes?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes just really quick. Close your eyes.
Okay.
I'm going to say these two words. Bad cop. Does any name or person pop in your head?
Yep. No. Oh, yeah.
None.
Yeah.
None for you? Nope. Thank you for telling me where the bullshit in the room is, because they don't exist. Bad cops don't exist. For you, I am going to say that if a bad cop exists in here and you didn't do everything that you could from the moment that you found out that he was a bad officer for whatever reason, for your own career, for your own family, you are complicit in every bad thing he did after he made it in your head. Everyone. And the concept that there are good cops and there are bad cops makes about as much sense as me having 1,000 apples and I tell you that 3 of them got razor blades in it. Why don't you let your 3-year-old dig over here in my apples? The good cops are the problem. Bad cops are the symptom. And unless and until y'all Stop with this blue line bullshit with these horrible dudes out there. There are some horrible police officers that have no business in uniform, and I don't call them police officers. I think that they should be, I think we are innocent until proven guilty. Because of the demands and the gravity of your job, you should be guilty until you are proven innocent. And the motherfuckers that work with you should push you should be good cops.
So you give up due process. Who would want that job? Who would want that job then?
The people who, the same people who would want to be politicians if you took all the perks out. Now, what I am saying is...
So you're going to have 3 people policing the city of Los Angeles?
No. You won't have 3 people policing the city of Los Angeles. What you will have is an erase of the shitty cops. And who should lead that charge? The good cops. But I don't see a load of good cops. I don't see all these good cops jumping up and going, look, this dude was wrong. This dude ain't shit. You hold this line, and I'm going to tell you what that line is going to get you. That line, right or wrong, let's just say that you're right. That right, wonderful, moral, responsible line, that statistic line that you are discussing, that you laying down on us, is going to get you a whole bunch more Dallas.
I'll go ahead and pile on.
Get you a whole bunch more Dallas.
I know you've been holding the twist.
It's a different twist now.
But I'm going to respond to that in a second. Go ahead.
But, as long as we're piling on, another problem along these lines is the political power of police unions. Because what we see in Sacramento and in Washington, D.C., are very powerful police unions that give a lot of money to politicians and sometimes make the difference in whether or not a politician is elected. So they are beholden to those unions. And so, when police activist groups or watchdog groups go to Sacramento and say, hey, we need more transparency, we need to see inside departments, we need to see police records more often, these unions fight like hell to keep it all secret. And I think this is part and parcel of what you're talking about, Geoff, which is police officers, police unions. They need to be more transparent. They need to be willing to hold themselves and each other more accountable. I think it's a good point.
But I want to say this. First of all, don't think that people don't go into police administration and say there's a problem with that officer right there, because it happens. Officers do that. Okay.
I think it's happening more. My sense is it's happening more often.
Well, hold on, because you said the problem is good cops aren't saying anything, and that's not true. Sometimes it does happen. But let me say this:
good cops ain't
I'm
doing
going to tell
enough
you right now, and nobody can do anything to me about this. I'll give you full disclosure. Ain't nobody going to do shit to me. The person I thought about when you said bad cop was a person who turned out to no, but he knows the guy I'm talking about.
No, he don't.
He may not know this about that person, but he knows the guy I'm talking about.
He don't know shit about no bad cops. The bad cops don't exist.
I'll just say it like this.
This guy's still sworn? Still active?
No, he's not.
No.
I know exactly. He used to like to drink a lot of He used to like to drink a lot of coffee.
That's bullshit in the room. I call bullshit. Right? I asked you who jumped in your head. You said nobody.
Hold on.
No, because
doesn't know. He may have seen shit that I saw.
But I want to respond to this.
Then how does he know who you're talking about?
He knows who I'm talking about.
That bullshit, dude.
He knows.
I'm only being. You know why I'm staying here being respectful? Because I love you.
Listen to this.
This is some bullshit, and I'm gonna tell both of y'all right now. Damn all that. I'm gonna tell y'all right now. If you keep with this bullshit semantics, there will be smoke in every fucking city because regular people are tired of being treated like shit by y'all. And y'all treat too many people like shit. And that is why this is. There's no other reason. You have bad cops.
Rhetorical, Geoff?
I'm feeling, yes.
Rhetorical.
You can answer my question to yourself in the car. I'm going to talk to my keys if I have to.
Well, here's the thing.
Listen,
this is the ride-along show.
This is
the ride-along show.
Hey, Doc, I don't even have to come back here again. I'm going to tell you right now.
Here's the answer to your question, Geoff. Here's why I didn't say anything when I figured out that this person was a bad cop, okay? Because that person was somebody who was very useful in the streets in terms of making sure everybody else got home safe. The area I worked in was a very high threat area. This person had the background and the skill set to make our job safer, and he quite often did. This person was considered to be a peer leader. This person was someone who most of us in the agency looked up to quite a bit because he had been there when the shit was rough and came to the rescue for a lot of people. So later on, years into it, when something finally didn't add up and it clicked for me that this person was an issue, I had to make that decision of, do I go and say something to people who I had no doubt I had already figured it out too, because they knew him longer than I did. He had been to the agency longer than me. So do I go and make a big stink about that and remove this person who has been so instrumental in keeping so many of us in our unit safe and who was such a vital part of our little team? Or do I just let it ride and let somebody else figure it out because it was above my pay grade?
By the way,
was that a cop-out? Sure, it was a cop-out.
That's pretty classic.
Sure, it was a cop-out.
That's pretty classic. As I understand it, not just in policing, but generally, that's pretty classic bad employee behavior. You make yourself indispensable in some way, so all of these other things are sort of forgiven because you've made yourself indispensable
or overlooked.
So there's some problems with
and let's talk about what bad cop means. Are we talking about somebody who's planting dope on people and putting them in the penitentiary? No.
Thank you.
It was nothing like that. It was nothing like that. You know what it was? Honestly, the big thing that made him a bad cop in my mind. You ready for this? He was a fucking pothead. That's the thing that made him a bad cop in my mind.
So that would mean that if the officers Stacy Coon and Briseno, if they didn't smoke weed, they'd be cool with you kicking the shit out of Rodney King on the pavement.
No, but I didn't know them. You asked us about people we knew.
So really, you mean because a dude smokes weed? Because he smokes weed?
Because a cop smokes weed.
Thank you.
A cop.
Thank you.
You know what? Maybe I'm crazy, but I think all you motherfuckers need to smoke some weed before you go out. Okay? That's the difference between weed and water.
Well, that day is coming.
That's the difference
that
between
day is
weed.
Coming, it looks
There's
like.
a difference between weed and water. You can drink enough water to kill you. Now,
so when you say bad cop, everything is relative, right? I never saw anybody plant dope on somebody. I never saw anybody plant a gun on anybody. I never saw any of that. And let me tell you why I didn't see it and why Gil probably didn't see it.
That's right.
You know, and you figure out pretty quickly who you can get away with shit in front of, okay? You know which one of your siblings you can tell that you had sex for the first time if you're a teenager and which ones you can't tell, okay? So officers who are doing all that horse shit are not going to do it in front of other people. The only other cop I knew who turned out to be dirty, and we didn't have a social relationship, but I saw him around and we knew each other's name and face, was David Mack, who was the one that robbed the bank over here at Bank of America. But I didn't know him personally. So, and I didn't know he was doing that until he showed up on the goddamn surveillance
bodyguard
footage.
for Biggie Smalls, too?
Right, exactly. That whole
All
situation. Right. Was it Tupac? It was Tupac.
There's a lot of stuff you guys need to cover.
So when you say dirty cop, I guess everything is relative.
When you say bad cop.
He said bad. You didn't say dirty. You said bad.
Right.
And to me, when we're out here, Geoff, and you tell me if this doesn't make him a bad cop, when we're out here arresting people for possession of marijuana, right? And then it turns out that you yourself, on a regular basis, possess marijuana. To me, that makes you a bad cop.
No,
right?
To me, that makes you just part of a hypocritical system.
Which makes you a
that is the mildest. That's like saying that somebody who got a DUI needs to go to Pelican Bay. I'm not talking about the DUIs. I'm talking about the Pelican Bay.
Oh, well, okay. I didn't know anybody other than that then, personally.
Well, fine.
And I didn't witness any other misconduct other than that.
Maybe they don't exist.
No. Not that they don't exist, but you asked me personally. I didn't know.
Here are the two key issues that have people pissed off. Well, three. One is the semantics and the micromanagement of every minor detail when shit's a little bit obvious. Like with the dude that got shot on the ground, these are the two things that are very, very obvious to me. One, the dudes in uniform had no business being there. Okay? If you can't run 50 yards without needing a fucking break, maybe you don't need to be a cop, because you know what? Young black dudes are fast. Two, whatever they're doing isn't working, because that is not supposed to happen. And what I am trying to tell you as an individual that doesn't break any laws I'm going to discuss with you about this evening,
okay.
Is that a regular family man, regular people, this is where the line is coming. Regular people are being treated like thugs and criminals. Why? Because all we get is how afraid you are for your lives. Nobody's making you do this job. Go work at Best Buy. If you are that fucking afraid that every time you roll up on a situation, your answer is your gun, then you are a coward.
See, let me stop you there. There's no cops that run up on a situation every time that's their answer. No such cop.
There's no such cop.
No such cop. Every time they roll up on a situation, their gun is their answer.
The young boy that was playing with a toy gun and got shot. What was his job? What was his thinking?
The
dude that got shot in the back.
You said every time.
What was he thinking?
So maybe I'm just stopping you from overgeneralization.
Okay.
Let me add this, and beyond that, when these cases do go down, and KPCC's investigation found 1 in 4 of the people shot in L.A. County by L.A. County law enforcement were unarmed, and I'm talking no gun, no stick, no bat, no nothing.
Right.
So I think. And what we found is when we could find it, because discipline records are virtually impossible to obtain.
Yes, they are.
But when we were able to obtain them, a lot of these cops remain on the job. So even if they didn't act criminally, even if they shouldn't go to Pelican Bay, there is a strong argument that they should at least no longer be
doing their job. And I'm going to tell you what.
But the problem is we couldn't even figure out a lot of the time whether these guys are still on the job.
I tell you who could.
Because
their personal records are protected by the peace officer.
I tell you who does know. The people on their beat know. The people who they do this shit to know. And I'm going to tell you what you pushing. This is what this bullshit system is pushing. Eventually, people are going to get so fed up that you're going to have cops getting set up.
I want to stop you.
That is coming.
I just want to stop. I want to jump in right here because I just been waiting for a little break here to jump in here.
Like double dutch, you're waiting for your opening?
Yeah. Okay. But this attitude right here, all of the outbursts that you've seen is what caused this. And I think he's absolutely right.
Now, let everybody know what that is that you're holding up. Everybody can't
this
see
is the card that said the 20 rounds that were fired at the officers in Dallas.
Okay, that's the part
my attitude caused it?
That's right.
So you mean the 2 cops that killed a dude on the ground didn't cause it?
Can I just finish, please? Can I just finish, please?
Now, let him,
you know what? Yeah, shit that whole turd. Go.
Thank you. That attitude, the refusal to even try to understand use of force continuum, police training, and because they've never had to operate on the street in the ghetto as police officers, they don't understand what it's like and what you have to do.
Why don't you tell me about the ghetto?
And how you
as a police officer.
That's hilarious.
As a police officer, it's a little different.
And you have to follow the law and department policy. Yeah. Those 2 things, that's where you live when you work on the street.
Then quit.
So, however, that's all of this is aside. The arguments that he's making are not fact. He's arguing feelings, not facts. Every time you try to get into facts, every time Frank Stolze gets some stat, we end up right back at feelings. And here's the danger of this. This is why I talked about black hate talk radio on Urban View.
Karen Hunter, et cetera.
Exactly. This is the narrative that they are pushing, and more people are buying into it. And the more they buy into it, the more of this you're going to see.
Whoa.
Well, you have to admit, though, that this shit happens too much. It does happen too much.
Does it?
I don't know if Gil.
Wait, let me just finish.
Yes, Gil is going to hit us with an acceptable amount of people dying. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Thousands of police officers all over this country make thousands of arrests
every day, and nobody dies.
Yay!
Sure.
Yay! Fucking what?
Let me add.
So fucking what? We're not talking about what you do right. So 10 way to goes equals 1 shit. Okay. This concept.
We know that. Sure.
This concept
that's true in law
that because you got some guys doing the job right should make it okay.
Well, it's not some though. It's a vast majority.
Okay,
it's a vast majority doing the job right.
The so what
this
is
not, and to say that this is all about information and no feelings. That's your problem right there.
Let's drill down into these 2 instances that we're talking about. Let's wrap up the Alton Sterling shooting and let's get into the killing of Philando Castile.
But I want to finish with the so what is these are the exception, not the rule.
That's absolutely true, and I don't think anybody can argue that because everybody in this room has been stopped by the police and everybody's still alive.
That's right.
So,
Again,
it is the exception.
Lucky?
It is the exception rather than
how
the
many
rule.
of us are
But
lucky?
there's been too many exceptions.
How many of us are
I
lucky?
will definitely agree with that. There's been too many exceptions that people are fed up.
Dude, y'all live in and I'm going to tell you something else. I'm going to say this, and then I'm done. I ain't got nothing else to say. The two of you, as men of color, are delusional.
Okay.
About
Especially you.
All right.
The fact that somehow in your mind you can rationalize being this peace officer that tries to sift through the bullshit of this system to find pearls when there are many black police officers who have been killed undercover off duty.
Right, we covered that on another show. Sure,
Okay,
we're not unaware of that. Sure.
What I am saying to you is simply this, that there is a big group of people that ain't making this shit up.
Right, not at all. Not at all.
It is not on us. It is not on us. It is on you. As I've made this analogy before, if this was feudal times and I was a tribal leader and you were a tribal leader and somebody in my tribe cold-bloodedly raped your daughter, if I don't turn him over to you, we go to war.
The whole tribe.
Guess what?
Sure.
You're not turning over your shitty people. Not right. Why is it every time somebody gets killed, their name goes in the news, but the cops don't? It takes forever to get the cop's name out. That cop, why? Because I don't think you're a cop once you step outside of what a cop is truly supposed to be.
Okay, now exactly right. However, let's say this though, and this is what Gil said. People aren't trying to understand the use of force continuum, and I understand that because the shit happens so much that people are like, I don't want to hear any more explanation. This shit just needs to stop. Right. I get that. I totally get that, and I agree with that. It happens too often. However, you can't say that. Well, that looks like it was fucked up, so he's no longer a cop. Let's take this person and drag him down the street and tar and feather him, because sometimes you need to look at what happened and look at the totality of the circumstances.
That's right.
And that leads me to the killing of Philando Castile. We have a video we're going to show. Now, this is one of those instances where we do not get to see how this happened, but we see the aftermath. And so we know what happened, but we don't know how it happened. Okay? And all we can do is piece together what's coming out now in terms of the investigation, what the eyewitness had to say about it, what we could see and hear the officer saying on video. So Philando Castile was a young man who was driving home with his girlfriend and her little girl in the back seat in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. They're pulled over by the police. Philando Castile tells the officer, just like you said, hey, I got a gun, which is the first thing you're supposed to say if you have a concealed weapon. That's the first thing. I teach concealed weapons courses, and actually many counties, even though it's not a law, many counties have that rule that if you're going to be a permittee under their jurisdiction, you will immediately let any officer who contacts you know that you have a weapon. He did that. Then the officer told him, okay, let me give me your license and registration. He reached for it, and apparently the officer felt threatened, and the officer shot him repeatedly, at least 4 times, and it resulted in him dying at the hospital. Can we roll that footage there, Poetess? And I know everybody's seen it, but we're going to just roll that. We don't have raw footage. We have ABC footage on it.
A new video emerging this morning of another police shooting last night in Minnesota. The traffic stop turned deadly. 32-year-old Philando Castile, along with his girlfriend and her child, pulled over last night, the beginning of the incident not on tape. But Castile was shot, his arm bloodied. The woman in shock, but continuing to live stream the situation on Facebook. In the video, she says that Castile had a license to carry a firearm. She says she warned the officer that he would be reaching to his pocket to get his ID. The officer appears agitated.
Told him to get his hand out.
You told him to get his ID, sir, and his driver's license.
She says the officer fired, reportedly 4 times. Castile, transported to the hospital, later dies from his injuries. Outraged family members and residents heading to the local hospital to protest, as hundreds gather at the governor's mansion overnight demanding answers.
No justice, no peace.
This as protests in Baton Rouge continue overnight as a second video is released showing another angle of the deadly shooting of 37-year-old Alton Sterling. This new video showing one officer pinning Sterling to the ground while another officer kneels on his arm outside a Baton Rouge convenience store. You can see one officer drawing his gun, and moments later, shots fired. An officer then removes something from Sterling's pocket, Sterling dying at the scene. Sterling's family wants answers.
I want justice for Alton. That's what I want. I want justice for him.
Okay, so earlier when we were comparing different types of animal feces, one of the things that came out of that conversation was that there's bullshit and there's dog shit, and that certain things have certain value and certain things are explained a certain way, and maybe they can be looked at through a lens of justification or prism of justification, and other things not so much. This is a situation where it appears, and I listened to what the governor had to say, the governor of Minnesota had to say about it. I listened to what the state police commissioner that oversees all law enforcement in the state of Minnesota had to say about it, although she really didn't say much because it's a pending investigation. There's not a whole lot she could say. But the governor of Minnesota himself came out after having been briefed. They hadn't interviewed the officer yet, so it didn't come from the officer. Said that the victim in this shooting, Philando Castile, showed no known aggressive action. It appears at this juncture that this is someone who is obeying all laws except maybe the vehicle code, because he apparently had a broken out taillight or something. Was pulled over. Well, that was the reason that was given. The justification was that there was a broken taillight. But it doesn't matter if he was driving without any lights on or whatever. You know, it doesn't matter. That should not have resulted in what we saw happen. The officer at this point, and it's really a shame that we don't have footage of the actual incident itself, and we just have to piece together what we are able to hear about now, because this is what we're talking about. And let me back up. They did this with Alton Sterling too. They showed his pictures when he was a little kid. They showed his mugshot pictures. They showed all of that, and we didn't use that photo. We used a photo of him at the scene. And somebody said, how can you put that picture up there? It's one of the pushback we got on social media. How can you put that picture up there? Have we lost our humanity as human beings? And the response to that was that we're not trying to sway this one way or another. We're not trying to show him as a family man with his kids. We're not trying to show him in his mugshot from his last arrest, because none of that matters. All that matters is what happened there at the scene. Right. And I say the same thing about this situation with Philando Castile, is that all that matters is what happened, what led up to the shooting. I know that it's very hard to look at someone bleed out and die in front of you. If you've not seen it before, this is shocking. I've seen it before, and it was still shocking. But we really need to know more about what actually happened.
Quick question.
Prior to. Yes,
Quick
sir.
question. Is that your son?
It is.
God damn, you can't deny him. Damn. It looked like you made him in the garage. He looked just like you.
That's funny.
God, please don't give these words any power. If that was your son, how much more footage would you need?
Well, see, that's a good thing about being in this position, is that I don't have to look at it personally like that.
You absolutely do.
I can be clinical about it.
Because that is your son.
And
that is your brother.
Be clinical about it.
And that's what you don't get.
But no, I do get to, because people don't tune in to hear.
Before you are a police officer, here's something maybe you need to be reminded of. Before you are a police officer, you are black.
Let me tell you something, Jeff.
Before you are a police officer.
Let me tell you something on the air in front of everybody that's listening. I was a black man for 23 years before I put on a police uniform. During the 25 years I wore a police uniform, I was a black man every day. Whether I was in that uniform or out of that uniform on my way to or from work. I've been retired for a couple of years now, and I'm still a black man. I understand that. I understand that my chosen profession is my chosen profession.
I don't think you do.
How do you say that I don't understand that?
Because for you to in any way not to see with the miles of footage of cops running. There's footage of cops running from white women with rifles. To not be able to balance that against what is happening to young black males.
Hold on a second. I know that you're a talented comedian and you're an insightful social commentator.
Thank you.
But I didn't know you were a fucking psychic too. So you knew what I was getting ready to say in the next 2 minutes?
Yeah, well, you know what? I didn't make that mistake first. Didn't you make that mistake about an hour ago with what you thought I was saying?
Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah.
Now,
but I didn't
all
come
I'm
back
saying,
at you and say, I need to remind you of this,
because
that, or the other.
it seems, I could be wrong, been wrong before.
Yep,
It
about to be wrong
seems
again.
about to be wrong again.
Yep.
Fuck me. It seems, and it seems this way with most of the black cops that I know, is that they think they're cops first. If you were, you could go anywhere and not have to worry about getting shot. You're a cop. That's not the truth.
Well, I want you to understand the unique perspective that driving to work in black skin, getting pulled over, not getting pulled over, whatever, getting treated just like you get treated, and then going into work and putting the uniform on and doing that job for 10-hour shifts, because I always work 4 10-hour shifts. I had 40-hour work week compressed. I had 3 days a week off for 10 hours. And then when I get off, the blue suit comes off, my regular clothes come on, whatever I'm wearing that day. Black skin stayed on the whole time, though, okay? And then I drive home. And so do you think that when I go shopping in certain stores, I don't get followed around just like you do?
I think you absolutely do.
Do you think that when I drive in certain neighborhoods, I don't get looked at twice? And sometimes if I'm out at 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't get pulled over.
You
just
can
like
bet your
do?
sweet ass I do.
Okay,
I
then.
make my
All
living
then.
at night.
Now,
However,
so,
I'm not
hold
willing
on.
to ignore that.
So, and I'm not ignoring it either. What I'm telling
would seem.
you, no, what I'm telling you is, I also have the benefit of spending those 40 hours a week on the other side of that in a police car. And I understand the reasons that sometimes we stop people. I understand that sometimes I stop you because somebody said you did something, whether you did it or not. I don't know. You're going to think that you just stopped me because I'm black. Somebody said that you did something. And that's why I'm stopping you. Now, in your mind, you think I didn't do anything, but I don't know that. So I got to stop you and make contact with you. Okay? I understand both sides of the coin because I had to live this dual existence for 25 years.
So
my perspective is going to be a little different than your perspective is going to be, because I got the benefit of your perspective as a black man, a 50-year-old black man, grew up in Los Angeles, but I also have the perspective of a 25-year police officer. So that's why people tune into this show, and that's why it's called the Ride Along Radio Show, because we're able to offer that perspective and give people the benefit of our collective experience as police officers.
Well, I dig the show enough to tell you that I think often, especially you, dude, people pay me $50 to say this. I don't know how the hell you look other Mexican people in the face. I don't know how you do it.
You may want to respond to that before.
That's just nonsense.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
It's nonsense, and I'm not even going to.
I can solve the cube in a minute and a half, but I'm way off on this. I don't know how you look at any Mexican people in the face. I don't know how you do it.
I don't think in those terms.
You obviously don't.
Yeah.
That's clear. That's very clear.
That's right.
Well, and again, people tune in to hear the perspective.
How do you know he's
police
Mexican?
officers.
How do you know he's Mexican? But
Right.
but we could get into the racial language at another time.
Am I wrong?
I'm just saying that.
Yes.
that
So
one of
now
the-
some people
I
may
just
have tuned
wanna
in to
say-
hear you go in on Gil and me,
One of the-
but a lot of people tune in to hear us talk about the killing of Philando Castile.
One of the interesting things about LA is the multicultural dynamic, and reading the different cultures and how they operate. I'm just sort of, I was interested. It was interesting that you used the word Mexican. Excuse me for leaving.
Okay.
I got a phone call from my editor. The shooting in Dallas, has got
Right.
police departments across the country
Probably on top
on
alert.
alert. I'm sure every cop on the beat in the country, certainly here in Los Angeles, has been notified and has been warned, even though there's no viable threat or no
known threat.
But one of the things that's sort of no known threat or credible threat.
What's the word? Yeah.
One of the things that in our coverage of this is one thing I've noticed is that police executives, I think around the country, are really doing some rethinking. Mm-hmm. That rethinking has not necessarily filtered down.
Trickled down. That's correct.
Down to even to captains or lieutenants or sergeants. That it remains really mostly. Not so much here. I've met a lot of progressive guys here in L.A. But I want to just add one other thing, and this maybe relates most to Minnesota. I'm not sure. One of the cases we covered was just tragic. There are a couple of deputies in Bell. Shots fired call. They pull up on a couple of guys in the back of an apartment building. It's a parking lot. They're drinking. One of them's black, one of them's Latino, and they say, "Hey, look, you put your hands on the hood." Latino guy puts his hands on the hood. The other guy, Dexter Luckett, puts one hand on the hood, puts his beer down on the hood, and then his hand down because they were drinking, and it turns out he'd been smoking a little pot. So he's not quite thinking super clear. But he reaches back, and he's shot dead right there. He was unarmed. Virtually all of his friends said he was probably pulling his pants up.
Well, he sucked at Simon Says. He should have put his hand.
He wasn't thinking about it because he's a little high. It's a Friday night or whatever.
It's an instinctual
whatever
thing to put his hands
right.
up.
It's an instinctual thing.
He probably does it 15 times a day. Don't even think about it.
Didn't even think about it.
Sure.
But the cues in the academy, and you guys know this, one of the cues is if somebody reaches back,
let them have
the waistband.
You don't even have to see the gun.
That's right.
Legal shooting. So I'm just throwing this out here because we raised this. Some of the cues don't work all the time.
They don't. No, they don't.
And people are getting shot and killed.
Thank you.
Right.
In our analysis, in my thinking anyway, yes, there's no doubt. Some number of unarmed people will probably be shot by law enforcement every year. Just because of the nature of the business, it's impossible to get 0%.
Right.
100% correct every time. You might have one or two. It's gonna happen.
Mistakes happen in rocket science.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
And that's science.
Exactly.
And I get the story wrong. I get the name wrong. I get the whole thing wrong.
Right, but it's life and death.
Yeah, right.
Life and death. We're talking.
But I think what we're dealing with, what was certainly in our reporting suggests, no doubt, is that there's got to be ways to reduce the number of unarmed people getting shot.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, you know what's happened is...
And that law enforcement, and that's what these protests, I think, a lot of times are all about.
Nobody is arguing that horrible motherfuckers should go to jail. And some of them should, if you out there hunting cops, you're going to get what you're supposed to get. I'm not saying that. Yeah. There are horrible people who are supposed to be, thank God, for jails. It ain't all of us. Stop. It's just everybody, dude.
Yeah.
But listen, let's talk about that. Those cues you're talking about. Yeah. Those cues are born of lessons learned when officers were killed because they didn't respond to somebody going for their waistband. We used to tell people, we walk up on a suspect if he had his hands in his pockets, we used to tell him, take your hands out of your pockets, man. And then you know what was happening? Once or twice, guy pulls his hands out of his pockets with a gun and he shoots that officer dead. And the officer doesn't respond because the guy's just doing what you told him to do. So now we tell everybody, if you got your hands in your pockets, keep your hands in your pockets. Lessons learned because the lessons were paid in blood. So those cues come out of case studies, and when you're in the police academy and you see those names on that wall, and if you fuck up bad enough in your police academy, you're made to stand there and memorize those names on that wall. You start thinking, my name ain't going on that fucking wall.
Right.
Okay? And when we talk about margin of error and things working 100% or what's an acceptable percentile, we're talking life or death. We're also talking officer's life and death. If you miss a word in a story, you get somebody's name wrong, or you spell something wrong, nobody dies. So if we're talking about, if you tell a joke and your timing's off and people don't laugh because you didn't time that joke right.
That doesn't happen.
And you didn't go to the Louis Dick School of Comedy timing. Then nobody dies as a result of that. Police officers making mistakes or rolling the dice, especially when you're constantly in these situations that are potentially dangerous day in, day out. You got to pick the solution that's going to keep you safe most, if not all of the time.
Absolutely.
Frank, this is what you guys were trying to find out with the Officer Involved series. And you found, you used my story about 105th and Compton, where I chose not to use deadly force, where I could have. And I could have killed that guy and walked away from it, and it would have all been good. And the other LAPD sergeant that knew the gang member, and he came out with a gun, so I think that's where we have to get. We have to find a way to get officers who are currently out on the street to give it that extra second that I gave it and that sergeant gave it.
Yeah. And
if they can do that without endangering themselves.
And that's the question.
And you said it earlier, Frank. You buy yourself time by taking cover. Yeah. You buy yourself time through the proper use of tactics. And that's when you can have that little cushion area in there because you've bought yourself time because now I'm behind an engine block of a car. Okay? Now I've got good cover. I've got some concealment. I've got some distance. And in that space, I have more reaction time.
Right.
So that's what buys you that extra second.
Right.
Had you not had that car door between you and the guy we're talking about that we both know,
right,
and he had been 5 feet closer to you, you wouldn't have had that reaction time to give it that extra second to get him to change his mind.
And I'm going to swing back, because we don't have access to most discipline records. These officers, maybe they shouldn't go to jail. Maybe they shouldn't be criminally charged. But we don't even know if they're still on the job or whether. And that's a problem because some of these guys, it was a mistake.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an intentional mistake or a criminal mistake.
So it doesn't mean you go to jail, but you lose your job.
Maybe they shouldn't be carrying a gun anymore. Now, and on the criminal side, what I think is going to be interesting, last year, I forget the numbers. I think average of 5 or 6 criminal prosecutions of officers who fatally shot people, I'm going to say over the last 10, 15 years across the country. Last year, up to 18 officers.
Wow.
So the average was 5, 6.
What do you think? What do you think changed that? Technology?
This year, video probably.
Technology,
but also the protests. No doubt, there's political pressure on prosecutors. Now prosecutors are seeing what's going on,
and they're elected.
And this year, I think there have been 7 or 8 charges filed against. So it's too early to call a trend, right? But we'll see how prosecutors react, and interestingly. We'll see how juries react because juries
if you go for the jury trial, inevitably
juries have sided with cops over the years, right?
Well, but you know what? We saw the where's Freddie Gray? Baltimore officers chose not to have jury trials, and they all been skating like Kristi Yamaguchi. Yeah. And I'm not to say that they shouldn't, but I'm just saying that's been the trend there. But listen, let's circle back around because I know that we're running out of time here, and probably have already run out of time. But our generous producer is letting us. Roll for 10 more minutes. There's a sign. Thank you. Here's my take on the Philando Castile situation with we saw the man bleeding to death on Facebook. I'm going off the officer's reaction and what was said, and the officer saying, I told him not to reach for it. I told him not to reach for it. Clearly, the officer felt some level of fear. Now, let's talk about that. It's written right into the California Penal Code, at least, that bare fear does not justify you using force against someone else. It can't be bare fear. It has to be articulable fear that a reasonable person would also be able to relate to.
And boy, are they taught articulation in the academy.
Well, we're out in the street, at least, right?
They are taught what to say and how to say it.
Yeah.
But what you've heard is an officer afterwards, and ladies in the back of the police car. Now, let's talk about that, too. The way that woman was treated was awful. That is going to come back to bite that police agency. She was handcuffed. She was detained. She was taken down to the station. Her daughter witnessed her being handcuffed, et cetera, et cetera. She was not ever suspected of doing anything. Mm-hmm. She was a witness. And the governor of Minnesota said this, and this puts this in perspective for a lot of people, at least it should. Can you imagine if this had been a white couple? Let's say this was Chad and Becky coming back from the mall, and they got
white
pulled
people
over.
aren't named Chad and Becky.
Well, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just throwing Becky out there.
Courtney.
Becky.
I met a Courtney the other day. She was white.
I know a black Courtney.
Okay, go with Don Tavion and Shaniqua, the white couple.
That's who it was, right? But
yeah.
Can you imagine?
No, let's name the white folks Don Tavion and Shaniqua because Chad and Becky are just not believable.
I'm just throwing Chad and Becky out there. So had we seen someone, and we still don't know if he did have a concealed weapon permit, but I can't believe that he wouldn't have. One of the first words out of his mouth is, I have a gun.
CC, yeah.
So, which is what he was supposed to do. He did what he was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. If that man had been shot, first of all, they rendered no medical treatment to him, which is going to be a problem.
Yep.
You're going to have failure of duty to care. You're going to have negligence. You're going to have all this other stuff going on. Where if you shoot somebody, it doesn't even matter if the dude was a notorious bank robber. If you shoot somebody, you're hard-pressed to articulate why you didn't render any kind of medical aid for 15 minutes while the person bled to death.
Whoever they are, you don't get to let them bleed out.
Right, exactly. You don't get to do that. So they're wrong in that regard, no matter what the justification was for shooting. And then when I said I would like to see the actual video, because that kind of lets us know what really happened, okay? What really happened. Because that video, she was right up on it. And had she been rolling that footage all along, I think we would have seen what really happened, it would erase all doubt. Fortunately, I've not yet see them try to dirty this victim up. I don't think it can dirty him up. If he's got a concealed weapons permit, he doesn't have a criminal record, most likely, right?
Right, because you can't.
You can't. Apparently, he worked for the school district, which also means he probably doesn't have a criminal record. So this is someone who was not anything but an upstanding citizen if he's got a concealed weapons permit, because you got to do a background investigation for that.
What doubt is there for you, or that you see? Not for you, objectively. What doubt could possibly be there?
Well, the doubt is just because I just simply didn't see it.
No. That's what I'm saying. Okay, from an objective standpoint, from what you think may come up, from what you've experienced in this particular scenario, what possible doubt could there be?
That maybe the gun was exposed, and when the officer told him to reach for it, maybe the officer thought his hand got too close to the gun, et cetera, et cetera. That's the only way that you could even kind of spin this and give any kind of little wiggle room for what otherwise was just an officer who overreacted and killed somebody out of bare fear.
And which one of those makes more sense to you, just as a common
Given the circumstances, given the fact that this person had no reason, and not knowing what we now know, which the officer did not know at the time, that this is an upstanding person who's not driving a stolen vehicle, who hasn't just come from robbing a liquor store, who doesn't have 3 kilos of coke in the trunk, there would have no reason to think that that man was doing anything other than what he was asked to do.
The problem is that he would not make those assumptions if Chad and Becky were in the car. And the truth is
and
that
the
there's
governor of
far
Minnesota
more
said
crime.
The governor of Minnesota said that when he said, imagine if this happened to a white couple and the woman was then dragged out of the car in handcuffs while her boyfriend / fiance / whoever is bleeding to death and no aid is being rendered. Imagine the outrage. So when I look at that, and I know it's way too early to judge because I think the officer's probably being interviewed now because they hadn't even begun the interview process when we started the show earlier. Maybe by now they have. But the officer had yet to be interviewed earlier today. When we know what gets put together from that officer, I don't know if it was an L car or not. I don't know if he's riding by himself or did he have a back cover officer?
There was another officer there.
Okay, so what that officer is going to have to say about it, plus what the woman is going to have to say about it. This woman who's got all the sway in the world at this point because she had the presence of mind to video stream what was happening. Her account is going to be given a lot more credibility than eyewitness accounts are usually given. Because eyewitness accounts are notoriously unreliable. They just are. Right. She even when she was live streaming, she said one time there was 3 or 4 shots fired, and then the next time she said it was 5 or 6 shots fired. She's under stress, she's under duress, just like any other person would be in a traumatic situation like that.
We should point out, just to put the exclamation point on, this is unprecedented. I mean, this live streaming of what we are seeing, we were already entering a new age, but this takes it to
another
a new level.
That's right.
And
exactly
because
right.
you don't think everyone in the world, I'm guessing every African American in the world is going, okay, so that's what I need to do. I need to immediately go live stream when I'm pulled over or when something goes down. Not just African Americans.
What in my opinion, what needs to happen is that
body camera video needs to be made available.
No, black people need to figure out how to use what they have in order to get what they want. Black people spend $1.3 trillion in this nation every year. What if, as black people, we said, let's find out everything that goes to and comes from Baton Rouge, as in hot sauce, as in coleslaw, and go, fuck you, for 100 years, we're not going to use that. The only thing an aggressor respects is equal or greater aggression. Take it from a dude that got picked on by a ton of bullies. There is this concept that this problem is going to work itself out judiciously is a fallacy. If you go back to the Dred Scott decision, it was determined that that man was not covered by any laws because these laws were not created for black people. Okay? You are dealing with a system that systematically looks at people of color. We've just said it in other words here.
We're not in a post-racial society yet?
That their value is less. All that President Obama did was bring it up to the surface. It's always been there. When we use Chad and Becky as an example, what we are saying is what if premium flesh was in the car?
Now, Gil, you haven't weighed in on that. I don't know if there's dash cam footage or not. The producers holding up a sign that's my dash cam footage. I don't know if there's any officer body cam footage or dash cam footage. I haven't heard anything about it, but it's discoverable if there is such a thing.
Yeah.
And believe me, the lawsuits are probably already being filed. Gil, what's your take on this situation with Philando Castile? I know that you made some comments about the live streaming situation earlier.
Yeah, I don't know. That's all I can say is I don't know. I don't know what the officer did. I know the officer shot him, but I don't know why. I don't know what the officer saw. I don't know what he heard from his perspective. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, he had to be hung from the rafters because he killed that guy. I'm going to say, I do not know. I have to wait for that.
That's what gives me pause, is because we've seen the aftermath. We saw what happened. We didn't see how it happened. But it's just some traumatic shit to see somebody bleeding out like that.
There's a problem with this dialogue. He didn't ask you what you knew. He asked you what you thought. What do you think?
So not facts, feelings.
I don't know. I don't know.
No one asked you what you know.
When you look at it, okay, let's talk about the aftermath.
No one asked you what you know.
Well, we did see the aftermath. So what about the treatment of the witness?
You want to know how I feel?
I want to know what you think about the.
I'm not giving a damn about what you think. What you feel. What do you think?
What is your opinion on what we do know? What we saw that happened after the trigger was pulled and the video started running?
I think the way they treated the chick was wrong. I think that, I don't know why they let her sit in that car for so long, because part of it was daylight. The next part she's broadcasting, it's nighttime. I don't know how long she sat there. I don't know why that happened. I don't know why the officer shot the guy. I don't know what happened. I can't make a determination, and I'm not going to second guess the officer until I have facts. That's how you make.
We don't have a whole lot of that.
That's right.
Yet.
That's how you build a criminal case. You build it on facts. You don't build it on what I think happened. Who cares what I think happened? What matters is
people who ask you care. What do you think?
I don't know. That's what I think. I think I don't know.
Okay.
I think not all the facts are in.
Here's something you may learn from now till the green people get here. The question, "What do you think?" is not answered by "I don't know," because no one asked you what you knew. They asked you what you thought. No one knew the Earth was round. What do you think? We only asked you what you think. Because what a person thinks.
Gil, he kind of knew where I was going with that. And we never rehearse or anything like that, but we're on each other's social media feeds. Mm-hmm. So we kind of know where each other stands on this whole deal. And again, none of us knows how it happened. We just know what happened.
The truth got put his pants.
Looking at, and since people want to bring up people's backgrounds, people want to bring up Alton Sterling's background and show him with the gold teeth and say he's got gold teeth but he's not taking care of his kids, which is some of the awful shit that got said in social media about that man, as if there's a correlation.
So he should die, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So so since we want to bring up people's backgrounds, although it's clearly not important, this is somebody who didn't have a criminal history, apparently. This is by virtue of his job, in virtue of the very strong possibility he was licensed to carry concealed. This is someone who was complying with police.
Shit on paper, he was white.
Instructions. I wonder what his credit score. Never mind. Anyway, I'll leave the jokes to comedian. But
did we point out that it was not Minneapolis or St. Paul police? That it was
right.
Falcon Heights.
Falcon Heights is an area of that, and it's a smaller agency. That I don't know if it's a county police department or something.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the racial makeup of Falcon Heights, but
I mean, I just think that we would all have a very hard time accepting this.
Can I just I do want to say, because David asked a question about 2 hours ago about, well, what do we do? And I think there are some things.
Yeah, you said you're going to address that now.
I think there are some things we can do. And I just had to, I spent the entire day on the range today training other people how to shoot, when to shoot, how to move and shoot. That's what I do. I teach. And one of the discussions I had with the people that brought me over there with your guy, one of the discussions we had, and I said to him, I said, your guys who are security people are dealing with the same thing that LAPD is dealing with. You're dealing with homeless people. You're dealing with 5150s. You're dealing with all these the kind of the same issues. And in fact, two of their guys got a call of a guy sleeping in his car. They respond. Guy won't respond. He calls for backup. The other guy gets there. They open the car door, and the guy's sitting in the car, and finally he's acting like he's asleep. So they just kind of push him. Hey man, wake up. And all of a sudden he wakes up and he sees them both and goes for his gun. He had a gun in his waistband.
Whoa!
What these guys did is, instead of stepping back and shooting, They reached into the car and grabbed him
On top of him.
and pulled him out of the car and put him down on the ground, took his gun, and held him at gunpoint to the police department for that
That
city.
was very brave of them.
Absolutely. And you know what the police? You know what the
Wait
police?
a minute, who did this?
It was security officers. And you know what the police officer said? The police officer told them, "Man, you should have shot that guy." Now here's the thing.
For being homeless and sleeping in his car
having a gun.
and having a gun in his lap.
And for being startled, and
for-
you should have shot him because it would have been better off
For
to
reaching-
end his life.
for reaching
than
for
to
that
figure
gun.
out- No.
You know, it's tough.
Dude,
this is a really tough
but
case,
here,
Bill,
let me-
because
the
he's
security
sleeping.
guard.
Back down.
Let me make my point.
Tough case.
Let me-
Very tough one.
My point is that those guys did what I did at 105th and Compton, what that LAPD sergeant did. Instead of jumping right to deadly force, they waited a second until they could see what else they could do. The reason they do it is because there's two things that they're concerned about. One, being prosecuted, and two, loss of livelihood. So that's in your mind as security people out there trying to help law enforcement do its thing with homeless and all this other stuff. So I think, number one, there has to be a way for officers to have that same fear. Right now, they don't have it. The other thing,
I think they do. I think officers are worried about going.
I don't think so.
About losing their jobs and going to prison more than ever before. More than ever before.
Anytime mall cops got it over regular cops, there's a problem.
I don't think so. But here's the big piece that's missing, and that is when there's an officer-involved shooting. The supervisor responds, and then the detectives respond, and then the attorneys respond, and then the DA's rollout team responds, and everybody's on the cop's side. There has to, and I submit to you that it has to be the public defender's office or the alternate public defender's office or some agency has to also respond a defense team. There has to be defense investigators who respond to these call out just like the DA's guys to start building their case. All of the truth is hidden in the very beginning of the case. That when you start interviewing witnesses and stuff, you need somebody on the other side who can interview the same witnesses that the officers are interviewing.
An advocate.
Absolutely.
That may have been one of the most significant things said tonight.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And unless the county or the state or somebody can decide which agency should do it, or do we contract this out to criminal defense investigators with law enforcement background who understand it, that's an answer. That's a piece that's missing.
And in our reporting, we regularly quizzed, the homicide guy, chief homicide guy at the sheriff's department, the professional standards bureau at LAPD. Hey, can you be really objective here? And they're arguing absolutely, but they're law enforcement. They're investigating their own guys. So
let me tell you this: that's not true. Okay.
I think
It's
they're
not
hard.
true.
I think that they are intending to be absolutely professional.
Yes.
But I think inevitably, if you throw in another voice that will be, from a different perspective, not even impartial, but just from a different perspective, then you'll get
and I agree with that. That's a great idea, Gil. And the funding should be there for that.
A cop in order for a cop to turn on a cop, it has to be so blatant. As I do my investigation, I have to go, whoa, this guy ought to go to jail. That's the only time it's going to happen. Any other time where it's kind of tactics and it's questionable, it's like,
get the benefit of the doubt.
You're going to get the benefit.
Absolutely. Well, here's a little tip. Here's a little tip from somebody who's never done any law enforcement, but this has saved my ass a few times. If you think that an individual has a concealed weapon, the time that they are at the most vulnerable is when they first go for that weapon, because now they have phalanges next to a piece of steel.
Yeah, that's true.
All you got to do is beat the shit out of that piece of steel. You're going to break
Through the
fingers,
hand.
thumbs, or the dude. Reach for your dad. If he was to reach for his gun right now, I'd put my foot on his hand. I'd put my foot on his wrist. He can't pull his gun out. There's got to be other answers. It can't always be, I fear for my life, bang, bang. Then maybe this ain't your job.
And that may go down to selection. It may go down to training.
Absolutely.
It may go down to maybe extend the police academy long enough for people to become actually proficient in that kind of defensive empty hand technique.
Okay, one last promo.
That's funding.
KPCC.org/officer involved. We look at a lot of these issues. And we also highlight, by the way, some heroic shootings by cops.
Oh yeah, we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
No, but I'm saying.
So-
What if we could find martial artists who would teach the cops for free?
Well, you know what? There's martial artists who are on the staff of the police academy that
That's
teach
right.
the cops.
That's right.
The problem is they got to learn so much other stuff, and you only got 6 months to do all that.
Right.
You'd have to extend the police academy another, however long you think it takes to get proficient. I understand the Marine Corps has got a compressed black belt program, right? That allows you to get your black belt a little faster.
I had mine
right?
before I went in, but yes.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah.
All right. So listen, our producer has generously allowed us to go a record 2 hours and 25 minutes, almost 2.5
My
hours.
girl, that's been moist.
Man,
Talkers.
That's
in the
been
room.
moist.
wow, this is, I don't know how
That's
the
my
rollout
wife
show
in
goes
another
this
life. That's been moist. That's my girl.
I would like a breakdown of how much time each of us spoke. And whether or not Whitey was allowed,
allowed to get his phrase
in terms of like, we could line it up
ratio,
with how wealth is distributed, and whether the wealth matched up with the time allotted, and if it was weighted.
Thank you so much for bringing up the plight of the disenfranchised, downtrodden white man.
Listen,
oh
you
my
know
God, just another place where you just don't get your way. Oh my God,
going this long, and I'm going to say something that's not been said probably in this room before. I have a newfound respect for Speedy because this is a long ass time to sit here
and run it
and go. And that dude does it 3 times a week, 3 hours a day, and then he's not by himself. But I'm not by myself either. Shit, I wish I was for a couple of times, but
exactly.
And
you did.
And this is a long ass time to go. But no, shout out to Nikki Pam and she's in here with him every day. And everybody else who rotates through here, and the supporting cast, so Precious and Vanessa and Kente and everybody else who sits here for 3 hours and does this. That's incredible to me because we've been going to 2.5 hours and I'm ready to go. So we're going to wrap it up.
Those Krispies only go so far.
Yeah, I know, right? So listen, we're going to give out our social media info, and we'll do that one at a time, so you'll know how to get a hold of us. So
I can't wait to see this one.
You can tweet us at Ride Along Radio. You can email us at ridealongradioshow@gmail.com. You can leave, and this seems to be the favorite platform, you can leave comments on the YouTube video when you watch this tomorrow. You can go to the Ride Along Radio Facebook page, which is blowing up today for some reason, more time than ever before, with a whole lot of smart stuff being said and a whole lot of ignorant shit being said, too. I have to go in and moderate that a little bit more. But people let you know how they feel, though, and I'm always astounded at some of the racist shit that gets said by people of every color. But if you want to get a hold of us, that's what you do. You got social media. I know you're on Facebook. What else you got?
Facebook, Twitter, at GB Funny Style. Just for the most part, hit me up on Facebook about this.
Mostly Twitter account. Stolze, frankly, is my handle. STOLTZE, frankly. FRANKLY.
Oh, that's nice. Play on your name.
Get it? You get it? Do you get it?
Stolze frankly at what?
Stolze frankly.
Is it at Twitter?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's his Twitter.
No
relation to Eric?
Man, my mother said, look at this guy. No, but we both grew up in the same place. And then, if you want to email me, fstoltz@kpcc.org. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
You did.
All right, cool. So listen, we are going to be back next week. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have a whole lot more new stuff to talk about. I hope it's not stacked up like it is now, but we're seeing having officers being killed, and we gotta address that. And prayers to those families of everybody who's been impacted by all of these tragic events that have happened in the last week, up to and including Dallas tonight. Everybody be safe out there. Don't do anything stupid. The consequences and repercussions will be way beyond what anybody wants to deal with in this country right now. We got enough bad stuff if you're paying attention to national politics. With the leadership that's coming up, because one or two, either the crook or the idiot, are going to get in there in November. And the last thing we need to have is fractured cities with that kind of leadership coming in to lead the country. So we can't. We need to pull together and not pull apart. And so it looks like that's what we're doing.
The Chinese are watching.
Yeah, no shit. So until next week, I'm George Holt.
I'm Gil Contreras.
And this has been Ride Along Radio. You guys be safe.